There are many ways to wake up in the dead of night, but none quite like the one that greets you in the heart of Whitechapel. It is November 8867. You do not wake to the sound of alarm, or the soft light of morning, or even the familiar creak of floorboards in a quiet house. You wake to the sudden, sharp realization that the air inside your room has died. The coal has run out. Yesterday it was a pile of black, dusty promises in the corner, a fuel that burned with a faint, sputtering glow, demanding everything you had just to keep the brazier warm for a few precious hours. You spent the last 3 days stretching it, feeding the fire 2 lumps at a time, watching the flame dance a fragile, rhythmic waltz against the encroaching darkness. But now that dance has stopped. The brazier is a hollow iron shell, cold to the touch, and the room has surrendered. It has become exactly what the night outside is, an extension of the freezing London fog, thin, biting and indifferent. You lie perfectly still. To move is to invite the cold to settle deeper into your bones. Your skin reports the temperature with a sting that feels almost like a warning, a physical reminder that you are not just a person in a room, but a soul in a competition for warmth. The walls, thin enough to let you hear the laboured breathing of the neighbours next door, offer no shelter. They hold no heat. They only hold the memory of dampness, and the faint chemical ghost of the match factory that lingers in your hair, a scent you can never quite wash away. You room lodging in East London, a space no larger than a walk, in closet, yet it is your world. It is where you calculate the arithmetic of survival. How much coal equals how much bread, and how much bread equals the strength to get to the factory when the sun finally deigns to rise. For tonight the calculation has failed. You are awake, the fire is dead, and the night is long. But this is not a story of hopelessness. It is a story of how, in the face of the biting frost of Victorian poverty, humanity finds ways to persist, to hold on to a flicker of warmth, and to turn the cold arithmetic of existence in something that can be lived, 1 hour at a time. The channel Sleepy History with Kevin is a storytelling platform created for entertainment, inspiration, education, and the promotion of positive emotional values. To understand what a night in Whitechapel feels like, you must first understand the architecture of the space you inhabit. It is not merely a room, it is a container for a life compressed by necessity. If you were to stand in the centre and extend your arms, your fingertips would graze the peeling wallpaper on one side and be mere inches from the damp plaster on the other. The dimensions are unforgiving, roughly 11 feet by 9. In the vocabulary of modern life, we might call this a cosy nook, but here, in the winter of 8867, it's a fortress of scarcity. If you were to lay a mattress down, if you were lucky enough to possess one that was more than just a sack of rotting straw, there would be barely enough room to crawl around the edges. This is where the folding, the stacking, and the layering of life happens. Everything in this room has a dual purpose. The wooden crate that serves as a chair is all storage. The thin strip of cloth you use as a curtain is also the shield against the prying, drafty eyes of the hallway. The window, small and perpetually filled with the soot of 1,000 chimneys, offers a view that is not of the world, but of a brick wall 4 feet away. It acts as a filter, transforming the weak grey moonlight into something that looks like dirty dishwater pooling on the floorboards. The floor itself is a map of failures. You can feel the drafts rising through the cracks, carrying with them the scents of the building. The stale cooking of the floor below, the metallic tang of the street outside, and the pervasive, heavy smell of human proximity. You are never truly alone here. The thinness of the walls means that the life of your neighbour is your life too. You hear their coughing, their quiet arguments over rent, and their own desperate calculations in the dark. In this geometry of poverty, heat is not just a comfort, it is a currency. When you lose the coal, you don't just lose the warmth, you lose your autonomy. You lose the ability to create a boundary between yourself and the harsh reality of the East End. You become acutely aware of the wood under your feet, the condensation forming on the walls where your breath meets the freezing air, and the way the room seems to shrink in the dark, pressing against your chest. You are living in a space that was designed to house a body, but it has become a space that actively demands your focus, your energy, and your endurance. And yet, in this cramped, airless box, there is a strange sort of order, a place for everything. Even if there is nothing worth keeping, you know exactly where the last bits of dust are. You know which floorboard creaks under pressure. You know the exact path from the bed to the door, a path you have walked 1,000 times and will walk 1,000 times more, as long as the arithmetic allows you to stay. Part 3. The air is thin, but the arithmetic is heavy. While you lay there in the dark, unable to sleep, your mind does what it has been trained to do for months. It begins to run the numbers. It is a cruel, relentless calculus that never balances. You know the cost of a sack of coal, you know the cost of a loaf of bread, and you know exactly how many hours of labour, dipping matches, sorting rags, or scrubbing floors, it takes to earn each. In the Victorian slum there is no such thing as a spare penny. Every coin is spoken for before it is even earned. You have already divided your existence into segments, the rent that must be paid to keep the roof over your head, the fuel that keeps the frost from settling in your lungs, and the meagre sustenance that keeps your body from folding in on itself. When the coal runs out, the balance shifts, and the math becomes a matter of moral weight. If you buy coal tonight, you have less for bread tomorrow. If you buy bread, you must endure the night with nothing but a thin blanket and the warmth of your own trembly breath. You are trapped in a loop of optimization. You look at the empty brazier and wonder if there is any way to stretch the last few cinders. You re-examine the budget for the week. Can you work an extra hour? Can you forgo the tea? Can you survive on bread and water for one more day to afford a handful of coal to heat the room for just 2 hours? The arithmetic of survival is not a metaphor. It is the rhythmic tick of a clock that measures your proximity to the workhouse or the streets. It is the reason why, even when you are exhausted to the point of collapse, your mind refuses to let you rest. You are a bookkeeper of your own misery. You keep track of every scrap of fabric, every piece of thread, and every splinter of wood. But what the ledger doesn't account for is the physical tax this takes on your spirit. To calculate your survival is to be constantly reminded of your own inadequacy. It creates a state of perpetual alertness, a hypervigilance that makes it impossible to fall into deep, restorative sleep. Even in the silence of the night, the numbers are screaming. You are not just fighting the cold, you are fighting the probability of your own undoing. And every night, the result of the calculation is the same. You have just enough to survive today, but no guarantee for tomorrow. To understand the cold in your room, you must understand where you spend your days. You work at the factory. Perhaps it is the sprawling, brick-walled hive of Bryant and May, just a bit to the east of where you lie shivering. It is a place of endless repetition, a mechanical rhythm that mimics the height of the Victorian economy. You sit at a long, splintered bench, your fingers stained, your back arched in a permanent curve, dipping wooden splints into the chemical slurry of white phosphorus. The air in the factory is thick, a heavy fog of vapour that clings to your skin and nestles deep in the fibres of your clothing. It is the smell of the trade, a sharp biting, almost metallic ghost that you carry home with you every single night. No matter how vigorously you scrub your hands, no matter how many times you change your apron, the ghost remains. It is in your hair, it is in your pores, and sometimes, in the darkest hours of the night, you can almost taste it on your tongue. The work is precise, yet mindless. Your hands move with a muscle memory that has bypassed your consciousness entirely. You count the matches, you bundle them, you box them, and you repeat the process until the sun sinks and the streets become a maze of shadows. There is no joy in the rhythm, only the dull ache of joints that have been strained beyond their limit. The younger girls, some barely more than children, sit along you, their faces pale under the flickering gaslight, their lungs working twice as hard to process the poisoned air. You've stopped noticing the smell of phosphorus, most of you have. They say it takes a few months to go numb to it, to reach a point where the stinging in your nose and the tightness in your chest become as familiar as breathing. But even if you stop smelling it, your body knows. It stays with you, a silent, lingering companion that reminds you of where you spent the day and how you earned the few coins currently rattling in your tin box. This is the life that buys the coal you just burned through. This is the source of the heat you are currently missing. Every match you dipped was a tiny, fragile contribution to a world that keeps moving, keeps lighting its pipes and its hearths, while you retreat to a room that has no fire of its own. You are a part of the engine of London, yet you are the part most likely to be ground down by the friction of the machine. All stories on this channel, Sleepy History with Kevin, are fictional, thoughtfully crafted around historical themes and inspired by real events, figures and periods, reimagined for engaging storytelling. The content does not present real individuals, actual events or document cases. Any resemblance to real people, animals, or events is purely coincidental. The bed is not a place of rest, it is a negotiation. Your mattress, a sagging expanse of yellowed straw and broken hope, is damp. It absorbs the moisture that clings to the walls, a byproduct of the cold meeting, the heat of three bodies huddled together for survival. Every time you shift your weight, the straw crackles, a dry skeleton sound that seems deafening in the silence of the room. You reach for the blanket. It is heavy with age, thin at the edges, and carries the faint, lingering scent of the damp streets outside. You pull it over your shoulders, tucking the frayed ends tight beneath your body, to seal out the drafts that snake across the floorboards. But the cold in Whitechapel is a persistent, hungry thing. It finds the gaps, it crawls through the weave of the wool, stealing whatever warmth your body manages to generate. You press your knees to your chest, curling into the smallest, most compact shape you can manage, hoping to conserve the heat that feels like it's slipping away with every shallow breath. Beside you, the rhythm of the room continues. There is the steady, laboured breathing of those you share this space with, a sound that is both a comfort and a reminder of your shared fragility. You listen for the change in their breath, the slight hitch that indicates they, too, have been jarred awake by the sudden, biting shift in temperature. In these moments, the reality of your life feels impossible to bear, yet you continue to bear it. You adjust the blanket. You close your eyes tighter. You wait for the morning. If you are finding this journey into the quiet, complex history of the past help for your own moments of rest, please take a second to hit the subscribe button and join our community. Your support allows us to continue crafting these immersive stories, ensuring that the forgotten voices of history find a place to be heard. If you're enjoying the atmosphere, a like helps this story reach others who might need a quiet moment of reflection too. By subscribing, you're helping us keep the hearth of this channel burning through the long quiet nights. You lie there, caught between the exhaustion that pulls at your limbs and the restless, freezing reality of your surroundings. The blanket is not enough, but it is all you have. You start to realize that perhaps the warmth you are seeking isn't just in the brazier or the wool. It's in the act of surviving another hour. It's in the quiet resilience of simply choosing to exist when the world feels like it's trying to freeze you out, and so you settle, you wait, you exist. The decision to leave the room is not made lightly, requires a tectonic shift in your resolve. You decide that you can't remain in that bed for another moment. The cold has become an occupant. A physical weight pressing against your ribs, and the air has grown stagnant with the scent of damp straw and hopelessness. You stand up, and the floorboards bite in the soles of your feet, cold enough to feel like a deep, persistent ache that travels instantly to your ankles. You reach for your shawl. It is thin, worn smooth at the elbows, but it is a layer, it is a boundary. As you step out of your door and on the landing, the temperature difference is immediate. The hallway is an extension of the freezing night. The draft that whistles through the gaps in the floorboards is a constant, mournful sound, like a spirit searching for a way in. You descend the stairs carefully, your hands grazing the grime, slicked wool. Stepping out onto Flower and Dean Street at 2 in the morning is to step into a world that never truly sleeps, even if it is shivering. You might expect silence, but this is London. The city breathes, sighs and mutters even in its deepest hours. The street is a corridor of shadows, punctuated only by the faint flickering orange glow of a gas lamp down the way. The light is weak, struggling against the pervasive fog that curls around the brickwork like a living thing. Your eyes adjust, and you see the familiar markers of your existence. A puddle near the gutter reflects the gaslight in a wavering, broken oval. A stray dog, gaunt and alert, pauses to investigate something by a lamppost, its eyes catching the light with a dull, predatory glint. It looks at you, assessing your worthiness as a threat or a source of food, before returning to its grim discovery. Down the street, you see a figure huddled in a doorway. A man sits with his back against the wood, his chin tucked firmly against his chest. He is motionless. Perhaps he is sleeping, perhaps he is intoxicated to dull the biting hunger in his belly, or perhaps he is simply waiting for a morning that feels a lifetime away. His hands are buried deep between his knees, an instinctive, desperate attempt to hold on to what lit body heat remains. You stand there for a moment, an observer in your own life. The air is so cold that your breath mists in front of your face, a small, ghostly puff of life in a landscape of stone and soot. You realize that you are not alone in this wakefulness. There are thousands of others out here, hidden in the shadows of the doorways, the warehouses and the alleyways, all engaged in the same silent struggle. You walk a few steps, your boots clicking against the uneven stones. The city of London is a machine that runs on the labour of the exhausted, and tonight you are one of the millions of gears turning in the dark, wondering if you have the strength to complete the cycle. You continue your walk, keeping close to the brickwork, where the wind is less likely to find you. This is the secret of Flower and Dean Street that the polite society of London never truly understands, even when they come here to write their solemn, pitying reports. They see the filth, they see the crumbling mortar, and they see the headlines of slum life. What they fail to capture is the dense, suffocating intimacy that binds everyone here together. The walls are only 4 inches thick, nothing more than a thin partition of rotting wood and aging lath, barely enough to hold back the noise of existence. Because of this, You possess a knowledge of your neighbours that is unnervingly intimate. You know that the Connells in the back room are 3 weeks behind on their rent, not because they told you, but because you have heard the soft, tense rhythm of Mr. Connell's pacing late at night, and the low, sharp whispers of his wife counting out what lit copper they have left. You know that the young woman on the 3rd floor is nursing a cough that sounds like grinding stone, and you know the exact moment in the evening when the silence falls, signalling that her children have finally drifted off to a fitful sleep. This isn't a community built on shared joy or neighbourhood gatherings. It is a community built on the shared frequency of survival. You know everyone's business because their business is the sound of your own reality. When the docks lay off workers, you feel it in the collective hush that falls over the tenement as the breadwinners return home empty-handed. When a family gets evicted, the silence that follows in their empty room is a heavy, physical thing that you can feel through the floorboards. There is no privacy, but there is a strange, protective sort of empathy. You don't judge the man who drinks to forget the bite of the wind, because you understand the rhythmic that drives him to it. You don't resent the crying baby in the next room, because you know the mother is doing everything in her power to soothe it with empty hands. As you walk, you find yourself thinking of these people, not as strangers, but as fellow travellers in the dark. Your lives are woven together like frayed rope. You are all clinging to the same precipice, waiting for the sun to rise, waiting for the next shift, waiting for the relief of a full belly or a warm hearth. In this extreme density of life, you are never truly alone. You are merely one voice in a chorus of millions, all whispering the same silent prayer for tomorrow. The cold makes you feel fragile, but the knowledge that you are surrounded by others who are also enduring, that keeps you anchored to the earth. Even the most frozen heart of the slum, there is some who acts as the anchor. Perhaps it is the elder woman at the end of the hall, who always seems to have one more scrap of coal to share when a neighbour's brazier goes dark. Or the young man who mends the broken hinges of the communal doors, not because he is paid, but because he knows the draught is the enemy of everyone. You think of them as you walk, these quiet keepers of the flame. They are the ones who transform this collection of rooms into something that feels, however tenuously, like a home. You realize that survival isn't just about the bread and the fuel. It is about the small, intentional acts of defiance against the cold. It is the way someone shares a cup of tea, the way they listen when a neighbour speaks of a better life, the way they pass a warm blanket to a child who is shivering in their sleep. These are not grand gestures. They are quiet, persistent ripples of humanity that keep the darkness at bay. If you're finding peace in these stories and want to help us keep this archive of history growing, please consider clicking that subscribe button. Your support, your likes, your comments, and your presence is what fuels this channel. Each action you take helps us continue to curate these moments of reflection for you and for others who seek comfort in the quiet, thoughtful corners of history. By staying with us, you are helping to ensure that the stories of the past are not forgotten, but are instead honoured, night after night. You pause by a window, looking out at the city that stretched endlessly in the fog. You wonder what the keepers of the flame jaw when they too are exhausted. Who do they turn to? You realise that they don't turn to anyone. They turn to themselves. They draw strength from the knowledge that their own small actions, the way they hold the door, the way they offer a nod of recognition, have kept someone else from falling over the edge. It is a sobering thought, but also a strangely comforting one. You are part of a network of resilience, even if you rarely speak the words aloud. You are keeping the flame for someone else, just as they are keeping it for you. It is a shared burden, and perhaps that is the only thing that makes the arithmetic of survival bearable. The cold doesn't care about your kindness, but you do. And in a world that is defined by what you lack, your willingness to give is the only thing that truly belongs to you. The night does not end with a sudden transformation, but with a series of quiet, almost imperceptible shifts. The darkness, which had seemed absolute and suffocating, begins to soften at the edges, losing its sharp, oppressive density. From your vantage point in the hallway, you can hear the first stirrings of the city, a distant clatter of cartwheels on cobbles, the low, rhythmic cough of a factory chimney beginning to wake, and the soft shuffling footsteps of a neighbour repairing for their early shift. There is a language to this time that requires no words. You can feel it in the way the air changes, losing the damp, biting edge of midnight and taking on the stale, smoky clarity of a London morning. It is the hour of the scavengers, the street sellers, and the labourers. It is the time when the arithmetic shifts from surviving the night to preparing for the day. You see a woman moving toward the communal pump, her shoulders hunched against the lingering chill, her movements methodical and weary. You share a glance, a momentary meeting of eyes that says everything and nothing at all. You both understand the weight of the hours that have passed and the uncertainty of the hours ahead. You return to your room, your own body stiff from the cold, your mind heavy with the need to start the cycle all over again. The room is still freezing, but as you step inside, it feels different. It is no longer a cage for your restlessness. It is a base of operations. You begin the small, necessary tasks that define your morning, smoothing the straw in the mattress, rearranging your few belongings, and checking the meagre stash of supplies that must last until your next pay. This is the ritual of the resilient. You do not wait for the world to warm you. You prepare yours to face the cold. You find the strength to tie your boots, to adjust your shawl, and to steel your nerves against the inevitable struggle of the day. The fear that kept you awake at 2 a.m. begins to recede, replaced by a dull, functional determination. You are not just surviving anymore, you are preparing. As the first faint grey light filters through the grimy window, you pause once more. You realize that the night was not merely a void to be filled with anxiety. It was a testament. You made it through the cold. You held on to your sanity when the fire failed, and now you are ready to walk out in the fog and do it all again. The city is calling, and despite everything, the hunger, the thin walls, the biting frost, you are still here. And for now, that is enough. Possibility is a heavy burden to carry in Whitechapel. It is the dangerous, flickering belief that tomorrow might be slightly different than today. Is the hope that you might find a bit more work, a bit more bread, or a slight thicker blanket to ward off the encroaching frost. But to believe in possibility is to risk disappointment, and in a world of arithmetic, disappointment is a luxury you can't afford. Yet, you do it anyway. You calculate the cost, you accept the risk, and you walk out the door. You reflect on the people you have seen this night, the man in the doorway, the mother struggling with the cold, the neighbour with the persistent cough. You all share this same burden of possibility. You are not just surviving, you are constantly reaching for a perhaps. Perhaps the wage will increase, perhaps the coal will be cheaper next week, perhaps the winter will be mild. These perhaps moments are the fuel that keeps you going, even when the actual fuel in your brazier has long since turned to ash. If these stories have resonated with you, if they have offered you a quiet space to reflect, or a deeper understanding of the human condition, please consider subscribing to the channel. By doing so, you become a part of our effort to honor these voices of the past. Your engagement, the simple act of sharing or liking a video, helps us continue our work, bring these forgotten yet deeply human histories to life for a wider audience. Every subscriber is a part of this growing community of thoughtful listeners, and we are deeply grateful to have you here. The price of possibility is your vulnerability. It is the willingness to care when the world is indifferent, to work when you are exhausted, and to keep believing in a future when the present is so sharply defined by scarcity. You have paid this price every day of your life. You have sacrificed your comfort, your health, and your peace of mind, all for the possibility that the next day will be just a little bit better than the last. It is a noble, tragic struggle, and as you prepare to step back out in the morning, you recognize that the warmth you truly possess is not measured in coals or blankets. It is measured in your refusal to give up on that fragile, demanding sense of possibility. It is the core of who you are. As you open the door, the cold hits you again, but this time you meet it differently. You are not a victim of the cold, you are its constant, defiant counterpart. You carry the possibility of a new day, and that is a fire that no amount of frost can ever truly extinguish. Centuries will wash over this street as inevitably as the tide in the Thames. The tenements you live in, with their thin walls and their shivering occupants, are destined to fall. In the 8880s, the great waves of slum clearances will tear these buildings down, erasing the physical map of your struggles. The Blitz, a later, more violent fire, will come to finish what remained, turning the landscape into a blank slate upon which a new, modern London will be built. The street itself will eventually vanish from the maps, absorbed into the shifting geography of a Whitechapel that constantly reinvents itself. Bryant and May, the factory that consumes your hours and your energy, will also pass into memory. Its brick chimneys will grow cold, and the site will be repurposed, replaced by flats and offices, with only a small plaque to mark the history of the work that happened there. The fog, that thick, yellow-lung, clogging pea, supper that blankets your world, will eventually be cleared. By the Clean Air Act, and for the first time in centuries, the people of London will truly see the sky. But here is the truth that the shifting sky cannot erase. The arithmetic does not change. People will still live in East London, and they will still wake up in the middle of the night to the cold. They will still count their coins, balance in the rent against the heat, and the bread against the survival of the next day. The buildings will be made of steel and glass instead of damp wood and brick, and the work will be done with digital screens instead of dipped matches, but the fundamental struggle of being human remains. Somewhere, on a cold November night, in a room that is not quite warm enough, someone will be lying awake. They will be running the numbers in their head, deciding whether they can afford to rest, or if they must rise and find a way to keep the arithmetic from failing. They will feel the same bite of the wind, the same crushing weight of the unknown, and the same desperate, quiet hope that tomorrow might be different. The cold is inheritance, the struggle is a tradition. And the strength you show tonight, the way you hold your life together with nothing but your own will, is the same strength that carries forward through every generation. You are not just a ghost of 887, you are a link in an unbreakable chain of survival. Every time someone chooses to keep going, every time someone chooses to care for another in the dark, they are walking the path you are walking now. You are part of something that will never truly vanish. You are a testament to the endurance of the human spirit. This content is inspired by and adapted from public domain works available through Project Gutenberg. The material has been transformed through original narration, editing, and storytelling to create a unique experience for educational and entertainment purposes. In a room where every inch of space is accounted for, your possessions are not just objects, they are anchors for your identity. You've a chipped enamel cup, a piece of ribbon from a better time, a photograph that has softened at the corners. These are your treasures. They are the architecture of memory. When the night grows impossibly cold and the silence of the tenement presses against your chest, you do not look at the emptiness of the brazier. You look at these things. You trace the rim of that chipped cup, remembering the warmth of tea shared with a mother or a friend. The ribbon, though faded, represents a day when you weren't merely a worker, but a person with potential, someone who could dream of a life beyond the soot, stained walls of the factory. These objects act as containers for your history that tries to simplify you into statisticity, a labourer, a renter, a resident of a slum. These small items declare, I was here, I felt, I mattered. This is how you survive the long, frozen hours. You don't just endure the physical cold, you build a sanctuary in your own mind. You construct a space where the arithmetic of rent and fuel does not exist. You allow yours, just for a moment, to remember the feeling of sunshine on your skin, or the sound of a song you once knew by heart. It is a dangerous, beautiful act of rebellion. To hold on to a memory is to refuse to be defined by your present circumstances. You start to realize that the slum has not broken you, not because of what you have, but because of what you choose to carry within you. The walls may be cold, and the future may be uncertain, but your inner world is vast. It is a place where you are free to wander, to recall, and to find the quiet strength that the outside world cannot touch. This too is a form of survival. It is the ability to maintain a landscape of grace in a terrain of grit. As you sit there, surrounded by the shadows of your room, you hold these memories close. They are the only fuel that never runs out. They are the fire that burns without smoke, the warmth that travels deeper than skin. And in this quiet observation, you find that you are not just a prisoner of the Victorian night. You are a guardian of your own humanity, protecting a light that is yours alone to keep. If you listen closely, the night is not silent. It is a vast, complicated symphony composed of 1,000 different rhythms. You are merely one note in this dark, echoing composition. From your doorway, you hear the distant steady clop of a horse, drawn hansom cab traversing the main thoroughfare, its progress marked by the sharp rhythm of hooves against wet stone. It is a sound that speaks of destinations, of people travelling to theatres, to homes, to places where the fire is always burning, and where the rhythmic of survival is never a consideration. Then there is the closer, more jagged music of the slum. You hear the sudden, sharp slam of a door down the street, followed by the muffled, angry voice of someone who has lost their patience with the night. There is the low, mournful whistle of the wind as it funnels through the narrow alleys, a sound that carries with it the grit and the sorrow of the East End. You hear the occasional, ragged cough from a neighbouring room, a rhythmic pulse that tells you someone else is still awake, still fighting, still breathing. These sounds do not compete, they coexist. The city is a singular, massive organism, and you are part of its circulatory system. Even at 3 a.m., the work of the world does not stop. You think of the printers preparing the morning editions, the bakers kneading dough in damp basements, and the watchmen patrolling the docks. They are all like you, living in the spaces between the hours, doing the work that allows the rest of London to wake up in a world that feels organised and orderly. There is a strange, melancholy beauty in this realisation. You are the invisible force that moves the gears of an empire. Without the people who endure the freezing nights, without the people who live in the one-room lodgings, the morning would not bring the bread to the table or the coal to the hearth. You are part of the hidden foundation. It is an exhausting, uncelebrated role, but as you listen to the city breathe, you feel a profound sense of connection to the millions of others who are also wide awake in the dark. The symphony is neither kind nor cruel. It simply is. It is the sound of life proceeding under pressure, and as the night begins to tilt toward the dawn, the music changes. The distant sounds grow more frequent. The tempo begins to accelerate. The city is preparing for the shift, for the return of the light, for the resumption of the struggle. You close your eyes, letting the sounds of London wash over you. You are tired, your bones ache with the cold, but for this brief moment you are attuned to the rhythm of something much larger than yourself. You are not just surviving, you are part of the height of history. There is a lesson hidden in the foundation of these buildings, in the very stones that line the gutters of Flower and Dean Street. You have walked these streets 1,000 times, and you have seen how the water flows around them, sometimes a trickle, sometimes a deluge during a heavy autumn rain. The stone does not fight the water, it does not argue with the force of the current, it simply remains. It occupies its space with a quiet, stubborn authority that defies the chaos of the passing seasons. In the dead of night, when the cold feels like it might finally fracture your resolve, you think of the stone. To be resilient in the Victorian slum is not to be made of iron, which can rust, or wood, which can rot. It is to be made of stone. You learn that the world will push against you with the weight of its indifference. It will flood your rooms with fog, it will strip your purse of its copper, and it will demand your labour until your hands are raw and your spirit is frayed. Yet, if you can anchor yours, if you can identify that one truth, that one value, or that one memory that belongs only to you, you become immovable. This is the philosophy of the survival of the East End. It is not about winning a victory over the conditions. It is about the refusal to be erased by them. Every morn you wake up, every day you return to the factory, every night you endure the hunger, you are placing yourself like a stone in the path of a relentless river. You are asserting your existence. You are I am here, and I will be here when the sun rises. You observe the people around you, the ones who seem bent, the ones who seem broken, the ones who seem to have vanished in the grey smoke of the city. But then you see a flicker in their eyes when they share a loaf of bread, or the way they straighten their backs before stepping out into the cold. They are stones too. They are holding their ground against a tide of hardship that would have long ago swept away anyone with less substance. The politics of the time, the grand debates of Parliament, the philanthropic missions that arrive with their notebooks and their patronising sighs, all of this happens above you in a world that feels distant and untouchable. You are the foundation upon which this entire civilization rests, yet you are rarely seen. But the stone does not need to be seen to be essential. It only needs to endure. As you sit in the dark, watching the grey light deepen, you realise that your life is not a tragedy waiting for a resolution. It is a monument in the making. You are the history that is currently being written, one heavy, enduring moment at a time. And because you are here, because you are holding fast, the world continues to move forward. You are standing in the centre of the world, yet you are invisible. This is the great paradox of your existence in 8867. London is the height of a global empire, a sprawling, energetic and immensely powerful entity. It is the city where the wealth of continents converges, where the maps are drawn and the treaties are signed. But none of this would be possible without the labour that flows out of streets like this one. You are the invisible architecture that supports the weight of the Victorian era. Every button you sewed, every match you dipped, every crate you hauled, each was a small, silent contribution to a machine that spans the globe. The trade routes that bring tea, spices and textiles to the ports of London rely on the meticulous efforts of thousands of people just like you. You are the gears that keep the clockwork of the empire ticking. You are the hands that process the raw materials of the world in the refined goods of civilization. Yet, as you stand in the dim light of your room, you realize that the distance between your life and the lives of those who inhabit the grand mansions of the West End is not just a matter of wealth, it is a matter of perception. To the reformers, you are a problem to be managed or a cause to be championed. To the factory owners, you are a unit of production, a variable in a ledger that must be kept as low as possible. They see the product of your labour, but they never see the life that is consumed to create it. This realization is not meant to fuel anger. Anger is too expensive an emotion, one that consumes the energy you need for the day ahead. Instead, it brings a cold, sharp sense of clarity. You are the architect of a world that does not want to acknowledge your existence. There is a strange, quiet dignity in this. You are not a guest in this city. You are one of its primary builders. The bricks of the great warehouses, the cobblestones of the busy thoroughfares, the very structure of the economy, it all sits upon the foundation of your endurance. You look around your room one last time before the day fully breaks. You see the marks of your labour in the rough colosses on your palms and the filial H's in your shoulders. These are not signs of failure, they are the blueprints of your contribution. The empire might record its history in the names of its politicians and its generals. But the reality of its existence is recorded in the stamina of the people who work through the night to keep it running. You are a silent partner in the history of the world. And as the distant sound of the city's morning alarm begins to rise, you step toward the door, ready to take your place once more in the architecture of the day, knowing exactly who you are and what your labour represents. The dawn in Whitechapel does not arrive in a burst of golden glory. It creeps in a slow, grey infiltration that bleeds the darkness from the corners of the room. This is the quiet revolution. Across the tenement you hear it begin, the distinct rhythmic sound of heavy boots on stairs, the opening of doors, the low murmurs of people who have survived yet another night. It is a mass awakening, an unspoken signal that the struggle of the individual has once again been successfully bridged in the continuity of the collective. You stand by the window and watch the sky transition from a suffocating brack to a bruised, melancholic violet. The fog remains, clinging to the rooftops like a thick woolen shroud, but for the first time the outlines of the city become visible. You see the chimneys, the slate roofs, and the narrow, jagged canyons of the streets below. It is a landscape defined by industrial necessity, a world built for function rather than comfort. Yet there is a pulse to it now, a quicken of life that suggests that even here, hope is a recurring phenomenon. This is your revolution. It is not fought on the barricades with flags or slogans. It is fought in the choice to put on your coat, to tie your laces, and to walk out in the biting air with your head held level. Every person who steps out of their doorway today is making a statement against the cold, against the hunger, and against the arithmetic that tries to reduce them to nothing. You are claiming your space in the day, asserting that despite the weight of the night, you remain, you persist, and you are ready to engage with the world once more. You think of the thousands of others beginning their journey at the exact same moment. You are a vast, silent army of resilience. There is no leader to follow, no grand manifesto to read, only the shared knowledge that today is a challenge to be met. The factory whistles will blow, the machines will churn, and the demands of the economy will press down upon you, but you meet them with a steady, earned gravity. As you finally reach for the door handle, you feel the chill of the iron against your skin. It is the same chill that greeted you last night, the same relentless antagonist. But your reaction has changed. You are no longer bracing for impact. You are moving with purpose. The night was a test of your endurance. The day is a test of your character. You breathe in the smoky, soot-filled air of the London morning, and for a fleeting, powerful second, you own it. You are a part of the city's lifeblood, a participant in its relentless, grinding history, and you are far from defeated. You step out, and the door closes behind you, leaving the room to cool in the silence, waiting for your return when the cycle eventually, inevitably, turns again. History, as it is written by the victors and the chroniclers, is a collection of grand dates, towering figures, and monumental shifts. It is a portrait painted in broad strokes, focusing on the skyline while ignoring the foundation. But there is another kind of history, an unseen archive, that resides in the wear on a doorstep, the dent in a factory floor, and the collective memory of a street that has been forgotten by the rest of the world. You are a curator of this archive, even if you never hold a pen. Think of the things that will never be recorded in any ledger. The exact weight of the silence after a shift ends, the way a neighbour shares. A crust of bread with a word being exchanged, the feeling of a cold room slowly warming as three people huddle together for safety. These are the moments that truly constitute the texture of existence, yet they evaporate the moment they occur. They are like the steam that rises from the Thames, visible for a second before being swallowed by the fog. Why does this matter? Because to acknowledge the unseen archive is to restore agency to the anonymous. You are not a ghost haunting the margins of London. You are a participant in a grand, ongoing narratives that the official history books are too hurried to notice. By living through the cold, by making your own sense of the arithmetic, and by holding on to your humanity, when the world demands you discard it, you are engraving your own mark upon the time you inhabit. You look at the walls of the tenement as you leave. They are covered in layers of grime, soot, and peeling paint, a physic record of every fire that burned, every breath that was exhaled, and every tear that was shed in this space. Every crack is a chapter, every scuff on the floor is a line of prose. You are walking through a living library of human endurance. Though these walls will one day be dust, the stories they contained are a permanent addition to the fabric of human experience. This realization gives your daily struggle a different weight. You are not just a cog in the industrial machine. You are an observer of a specific pivotal era. You see the contradictions of the Victorian age, the immense wealth standing in the shadow of unimaginable poverty, more clearly than any politician ever could. You are the witness that history needs, even if it never asked for your testimony. You carry the stories of those who cannot speak, the struggles that go unremarked, and the quiet triumphs that occur every day behind closed doors. You are the archive, and as long as you observe, and as long as you persist, the memory of this time remains vibrant, alive, and profoundly real. As you move through the greying morning, you begin to perceive time not as a straight line, but as a series of overlapping echoes. What you endure today is not meant to die with you. There is something in the way you set your shoulders, in the way you value a moment of quiet, and in the way you navigate the impossible arrhythmic of survival that will vibrate forward through the decades. You are planting seeds of resilience that you will never see bloom, but that the future will harvest. Imagine, centuries from now, someone standing in the very spot where this slum once stood. They will look at the modern structures, the steel, the glass, the bright, efficient lighting, and they will feel a ghost of the cold that you feel today. They will look at their own lives, their own complex struggles, and they will look back at your time, searching for a mirror. They will wonder how you did it. They will wonder how the human spirit survived the soot, the hunger, and the indifference of an era that measured progress in iron and gold. Your legacy is not in monuments, it is not in names carved in stone, it is in the inheritance of stamina. Every time a future soul faces a crisis, every time someone feels their own arithmetic of survival failing, they will draw upon an ancestral strength that has been passed down through the stories of the survivors. They will remember that there were people once who lived in the shadow of the great industrial revolution, who kept their fires burning in small braziers and their dignity burning in their hearts, and who never ever stopped trying to make it to the next day. This is the echo of the future. You are building a bridge across time with your endurance. By refusing to be broken, you are proving to all who follow that the human spirit is an irreducible force. It cannot be measured, it cannot be quantified, and it cannot be discarded. When the future reflects on your life, they will not see a victim, they will see a pioneer of persistence. The city around you is waking up, the sound of steam missiles and shouting voices growing into a roar. You are being absorbed back in the great, grinding motion of London, but you carry the secret knowledge of the survivor. The future is not just a distant time, it is a promise you are currently fulfilling. You walk toward your work with a new quiet power, knowing that your struggle has a purpose that extends far beyond the reach of your own life. You are not just living for today, you are creating the foundation for a resilience that will sustain millions yet to be born. As you navigate the labyrinthine streets of Whitechapel, the fog begins to lift just enough to reveal the city in its stark, uncompromising reality. You realize that your life is not an isolated incident, it is a single vital thread woven into vast, unseen tapestry that spans across time and space. Every act of kindness, every moment of suffering, every decision to persist, these are the colors and textures of human history. Without your thread, the tapestry would have a gap, a weakness, a flaw in the design that portrays the true strength of our species. The people you pass, the flower seller with her hands stiff from the damp, the street sweeper clearing the refuse of a city that never sleeps, the child running an errand with eyes too old for their years, they are all weaving their own threads alongside yours. Some are vibrant, some are worn, some are frayed, but they all part of the same intricate pattern. You are connected to them not by blood or status, but by the shared geography of endurance. There is a profound comfort in this realization. You are not just a solitary figure wandering through a cold, indifferent metropolis. You are part of a massive, collaborative work of art. The suffering you endure is not in vain, because it contributes to the collective wisdom of humanity. You will learn what it means to be alive, what it means to be resilient, and what it means to be human in the face of impossible odds. This wisdom is your contribution to the tapestry. The masters of history, the architects of the Victorian age, might see this city as a ledger of exports and imports, of consumption and factory output, but you see the human side of the ledger. You see the cost of the tea in the cup of a distant aristocrat, the blood in the velvet of a fashionable coat, and the exhaustion that builds the bridges and tunnels of a rising empire. You are the hidden complexity that makes the simplicity of the ruling class possible. As you continue your walk, you feel a strange sense of belonging. The damp chill of the morning no longer feels like a personal attack. It feels like the atmosphere of the tapestry you are helping to create. You are the architect of your own history, a weaver of your own thread, and no matter how frayed that thread may become, it remains an essential part of the whole. You carry the responsibility of your existence with a quiet grace, knowing that your life, in all its struggle and its beauty, is an indispensable part of the story of humanity. You have spent the night mourning the death of the fire in your brazier, but as the day fully breaks, you begin to understand a deeper truth. The fire that truly mattered was never in the coal. The fire is in the deliberate, steady rhythm of your heart. It is in the defiance of your lungs, which continue to draw breath despite the soot-heavy air. It is the eternal flame of human consciousness, that stubborn, unquenchable spark that refuses to be extinguished by the freezing temperatures of a Victorian winter, or the grinding gears of an industrial machine. This flame is not fueled by external commodities. It does not require logs of wood or mounds of coal to keep burning. It is fueled by the simple, profound fact of your own existence. Every time you refuse to despair, every time you choose to acknowledge the humanity of a neighbour, and every time you step out in the cold with the intention of surviving another day, you are stoking this internal fire. It is the most powerful resource you possess, and yet it is the one the world most often forgets to count. The city around you is a place of immense consumption. It consumes coal, it consumes timber, it consumes the energy of 1 million workers, and it consumes the very lives of those who dwell in its shadow. But there is a limit to what it can take. It can take your strength, it can take your time, and it can take your comfort, but it cannot touch the essence of who you are. Your identity, your memories, and your capacity to hold onto your own worth are the things that the city cannot digest. They remain, glowing quietly within you, a beacon of defiance in the gloom. You realize that this flame is what connects you to every other person who has ever walked through a difficult night. It is the shared inheritance of the human experience. Whether they lived in the slums of 8867 or will live in the cities of a future yet to come, the struggle is the same, and the internal warmth is the same. You are part of a lineage of fire keepers, people who recognized that as long as they could keep their own dignity alight, they could never truly be defeated by the cold. As you walk down the final stretch toward the factory gates, you feel the warmth of that realization spreading through your chest. The outside world is still biting, the wind is still sharp, and the tasks of the day are still demanding, but the fear has been replaced by a quiet, steady resolve. You are the vessel of something enduring. You are the guardian of a flame that has survived every winter in history. And as you prepare to pass through the gates and surrender your hours to the work of the empire, you do so with the knowledge that the most vital part of you is already safely tucked away, burning bright, untouchable, and perpetually alive. Your physical horizon has always been frustratingly short. The bend in Flower and Dean Street, the looming brick mass of the factory, the low, hanging fog that turns the London sky into ceiling of lead. In the reality of your daily life, you are surrounded by constraints. Yet you have discovered that there is an unseen horizon that no slum, no factory wall, and no industrial machine can ever obstruct. It is the boundary of your imagination, a space where you are not a labourer, but a traveller of ideas. When you look at the horizon of your own potential, you don't see the limits of your employment. You see the vastness of the world that you have helped build, but were never invited to explore. You think of the ships leaving the London docks, bound for ports whose names sound like prayers, Bombay, Shanghai, the distant shores of the Americas. You know you may never step foot on those decks, but you hold the map of the world in your mind. By simply being aware of the scale of the earth, you expand your own internal territory, making your confinement feel less like a prison and more like a temporary station. This unseen horizon is where you store your aspirations. It is where you keep the versions of yours that the world refused to nurture. The version that could read and write fluently. The version that could build a house instead of just cleaning one. The version that could stand in the halls of power and speak for the people of the East End. To dream of these things is not an act of escapism, it is an act of reclamation. It is reclaiming the future that was stolen from you before you were even born. You realize that those who keep their eyes fixed only on the ground, on the immediate task of survival, are the ones who are truly trapped. But you have learned to look past the smog. You have learned that the mind can travel further than the body ever could. This is the secret privilege of the oppressed. A clarity of perspective that the wealthy, blinded by their comforts, will never possess. You see the world not as it is marketed to be, but as it actually functions, a complex interconnected web of human effort and systemic inequality. As you stand before the factory gates one more time, ready to begin your shift, you take a moment to look up past the dark chimneys and the grey haze. You know there is a sun behind the clouds, and you know there is a world beyond the Whitechapel grid. You carry this unseen horizon within you like a compass. It dictates your direction, even when the road is dark. You are not defined by the limitations of your environment. You are defined by the breadth of your vision. And as long as you can see the horizon, no matter how invisible it is to others, you are walking toward a destination that is entirely and beautifully your own. You have never thought of yours as an authority on anything. Authority is something wielded by the men in top hats who pace the offices of the counting houses or the gentlemen in Parliament who debate the condition of the people as if they are discussing a failed harvest or a broken piece of machinery. Yet there is a quiet authority that belongs to you, the authority of the witness. You have seen what they only theorize. You have felt the cold that they only read about in reports, and you have endured the exhaustion they mistake for laziness. To be a witness is a heavy responsibility. It means that your observations are the final, undeniable truth of the era. If the history books of the future claim that this time was an age of unbridled progress and triumph, they will be wrong, for they will have ignored the testimony of your body. Your hunger is a fact. The damp in your bones is a fact. The way the light fails in the alleyway at dusk is a fact. You are the counter, narrative to their grand story of empire. You are the ghost in the machine of progress, the one who saw the gears grind down the lives of the many to polish the treasures of the few. There is a dignity in this witness. It transforms your day life from a series of tasks into a project of documentation. When you walk, you are recording the rhythm of the street. When you eat, you are documenting the cost of survival. When you sleep in the brief, fitful intervals between shifts, you are witnessing the fragility of the human condition. You do not need a quill or a ledger to be a chronicler. You are a living, breathing record of what was required to build the world of the 19th century. You begin to understand that your silence, the quiet way you move through your day, is not weakness. It is the controlled stillness of someone who knows the truth. You are watching the city change, watching the tenements fall and the factories rise, and you are holding these transitions in your memory. You are the archive that cannot be burned. You are the voice that speaks in the language of lived experience. Even if you never speak your truth aloud, it exists. It is etched into your identity, and it shapes the way you interact with every person you encounter. As the factory gates loom before you, you realize that your presence here is an act of observation. You are not just working, you are watching. You are seeing the desperation of your peers and the indifference of your masters with a clarity that is chillingly precise. This is your power. You may lack money, you may lack influence, but you possess the truth of your own life. And as you prepare to disappear into machinery once more, you hold this truth close, knowing that while you may be a small part of the great industry engine, you are the one who knows what it costs to keep it running. You are the witness, and your testimony witnessed by the cold, the fog, and the rising sun is absolute. If you look closely at the walls of this tenement, you see how they have been patched and repatched bricks, held together by mortar that has long since crumbled wood that has warped under the pressure of damp and time. It is a structure that defies gravity only by the sheer stubbornness of its design. This is the perfect metaphor for your own existence. You are a living architecture of resilience. You have been patched, stressed, and weathered, yet you have not collapsed. Resilience is not merely the absence of breaking, it is the active process of being built and rebuilt. You have developed an internal structural integrity that the city's environment cannot penetrate. When the wind of fortune turns against you, you shift your weight, much like the swaying of a tall chimney in a gale. When the weight of your circumstance becomes unbearable, you distribute that burden across the foundations of your character, your pride, your memories, and your quiet determination. You have learned that resilience is not a static state, it's a daily maintenance project. It is the conscious decision to wake up even when your body feels like lead. It is the careful gathering of your thoughts into a coherent pattern when the noise of the street threatens to scatter your mind. You have become an expert shoring up your defences, the way you organise your meagre belonging, the way you maintain your own physical dignity, even when your clothes are threadbare, and the way you offer a nod of recognition to a neighbour. These are the structural beams of your spirit. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of this architecture is that it is invisible. To an outsider walking past the entrance of your tenement, you appear to be merely another shadow in the East End, another figure lost in the industrial fog. They do not see the elaborate bracing of your resolve or the vaulted ceilings of your imagination. They do not know that behind the eyes of an exhausted labourer lies a complex, resilient monument to human endurance. As you stand before the threshold of the factory for another day's labour, you feel the familiar ache of the structure, the exhaustion in your muscles, and the weariness in your spirit. But you also feel the strength of the foundation you have laid. You know that you can withstand another 12 hours of toil because you have built yourself to last. You are not a temporary structure waiting to be demolished. You are a permanent inhabitant of your own resilience. You step forward, fully aware that no matter what the day demands, you are architecturally sound, capable of holding up the weight of your own life, one moment at a time. There is a dialect spoken in Whitechapel that does not require a voice. It is the language of shared experience, the subtle calibrated nod you give to a woman carrying a heavy crate, the way a man steps aside in a crowded, muddy alley to let you pass, the brief knowing look in the eyes of a stranger who is also shivering in the dawn mist. This is the unspoken language of solidarity. It is more reliable than any law, more binding than any contract, and more profound than any conversation you have ever had with the wealthy patrons of the city. When you speak to someone in this language, you are communicating volumes with a single syllable. You are saying, "I see you. I know the weight of your burden. I know the arithmetic of your survival, for it is the same as mine." In a city that is designed to keep everyone isolated, to pit worker against worker for the same scrap of bread or the same shift at the loom, this language is an act of defiance. It proves that despite the efforts to divide you, a fundamental, unbreakable connection remains. You have learned to read the nuances of this silent speech perfectly. You can tell who is on the edge of breaking just by the slump of their shoulders, and you can sense who is holding on to a sliver of hope by the way they adjust their scarf against the cold. There is a deep, quiet comfort in being understood without the need for explanation. It saves you from the exhaustion of having to defend your existence or justify your fatigue. You simply exist and you are acknowledged. This solidarity is not based on grand ideals of brotherhood or political agendas. It is rooted in the gritty, physical reality of survival. It is the communal knowledge that we are all in the same storm, even if we are in different boats. When you see a neighbour share a bit of fuel or help mend a broken lock, you are not witnessing an act of charity. You are witnessing the maintenance of the web that keeps you all from falling into the abyss. It is the architecture of human care, reinforced by the shared experience of the struggle. As you step into the crowded streets, heading toward the factory, you are surrounded by this quiet, humming network of recognition. You are not a stranger in a mob, you are a participant in a collective movement. Each person you pass is a mirror reflecting the same tenacity, the same silent courage, and the same quiet authority. You are never truly alone, because you are constantly bathed in the unspoken acknowledgement of those who are walking the same path. And as you merge into the tide of people flowing toward the gates, you feel the strength of that connection, a vast, silent and incredibly resilient current that carries you forward together against the tide of the dark. There is a misconception that history is only made in the glare of the limelight, in the debating chambers, the boardrooms, and the marble-halled palaces. But you know better. You know that the most profound human legacy is often crafted in the shadows, in the quiet corners of a room where a mother whispers strength to her child, or where two strangers share a glance of understanding in the freezing mist. These are the legacies of the shadows, and they are as enduring as the city itself. When you think about the mark you will leave on the world, it is easy to feel small. You have no property, no title, and no influence over the direction of the empire. But look at how the shadow you cast on the wall of your room changes with the flickering of the brazier. It is a silhouette that moves, that breathes, and that exists. Even in the darkest moments, your presence creates a shape. Your life, with all its struggles and its small, quiet victories, has displaced the darkness. You have occupied space, you have asserted your reality, and you have influenced the air around you. The legacy of the shadows is the invisible weight of your endurance. It is the way your survival has shaped the neighborhood, the subtle shift in the mood of the street. When you walk with your head held high, and the silent strength you pass on to those who come after you, you are the unspoken ancestor of the future. The people who will live in this city, long after these bricks have turned to dust, will walk on the same ground, breathing the same air, and they will, in some subtle ancestral way, inherit your capacity to persist. This is not a legacy of glory, it is a legacy of grit. It is the foundation of character that allows a civilization to survive its own excesses. You are demonstrate into the future that even when the world seems to have forgotten the value of an individual life, the individual life continues to possess a worth that is absolute. By keeping your integrity in the shadows, you are ensuring that the light of human dignity does not go out. You are protecting the fire that will eventually illuminate a world that doesn't yet know it needs your strength. As you step into the factory, the shadows here are deeper, filled with the dust of the machines and the heavy mechanical pulse of the day. But you are no longer afraid of the dark. You understand now, the shadows are not a void. They are a canvas upon which you have written your life's story. You have been a witness, a builder, and a keeper of the flame. And as you take your place at the machine, you do so with the serene knowledge that your legacy is secure. It is woven in the very fabric of the city, hidden in the shadows, waiting for the day when the history of the unseen will finally be told. Survival is not a chaotic sprawl, it is a discipline of geometry. In the cramped soot-stained confines of your tenement, you have learned to master the spatial arithmetic of existence. You know exactly how many steps it takes to cross the floor without bumping in the legs of the table. You know the precise angle at which the morning light hits the dust motes in your room, signaling that it is time to rise. You have mapped the room not by its dimensions but by its utility, the corner where the damp gathers, the spot where the warmth holds. For just a few minutes longer, the threshold that marks the boundary between your inner peace and the chaotic roar of the street. This geometry extends beyond your walls. It is the way you navigate the city itself. You do not move through London in straight lines. You move in arcs and zigzags, avoiding the thoroughfares dominated by the carriages of the wealthy, hugging the walls of the narrow alleys where the fog provides a thin veil of privacy. You have developed a mental map of survival, a complex grid of safe harbours and hazard crossings, all calculated to minimize friction with a world that would grind you down if you walk carelessly. There is a quiet, mathematical beauty in this. You are constantly calculating the pressure of your circumstances against the structural integrity of your own will. How much hunger can you withstand before the geometry of your focus begins to warp? How much cold can the architecture of your spirit absorb before the walls of your resolve begin to crack? You have become an architect of the intangible, designing a life that fits into the gaps left by a society that cares nothing for your dimensions. This is the geometry of the unseen. To an outside observer, the slum looks like a jumble of misery, a heap of bricks and humanity thrown together by neglect. But you see the lines of force that hold it all together. You see the intricate connections of support. The woman who keeps a shared pot of water, the man who watches the street so others can rest, the unspoken pathway of labour that connect every room in the tenement to the heart of the industrial machine. You are part of a massive living construction, and your position in this grid is essential. As you stand amidst the rhythm of the factory floor, midst the sharp angles of metal and the grinding rotations of heavy gears, you perceive the irony of your situation. The world is built on rigid, unforgiving geometry, the cold precision of the machine, the cold logic of profit, the sharp boundaries of class. But your life exists in the spaces between these shapes. You are the flexible, enduring element in an otherwise brittle design. You are the curve that softens the angle. And as you perform the repetitive task of your trade, you feel the geometry of your own survival shifting and adapting. Maintain your balance, even when the world tilts, proving that no matter how tightly the city tries to square you off, the human spirit will always find a way to remain round, resilient, and whole. Silence in the East End is a rare and heavy commodity. It is never truly empty. It is a pressurized space where the echoes of the day gather and settle. When you finally find a moment of stillness, perhaps in the dead of night, or in that fleeting, suspended second before the factory whistle screams, you realize that silence has a resonant frequency. It acts like a tuning fork for the soul, vibrate with the intensity of everything you have felt, seen, and endured. In this resonance, you find that you are not merely a witness to your own life, you are a listener to the collective history of your surroundings. The silence of the slum is not a void, it is filled with the unuttered histories of millions. It carries the weight of past winters, the sighs of weary labourers from decades gone by, and the quiet, persistent pulse of human courage. When you surrender to this silence, you are not being isolated, you are being connected. You are tapping into a vast underground stream of humanity that flows beneath the clatter of the iron-willed empire. This is where the true work of the human spirit happens. The factory demands your hands, the city demands your labour, and the economy demands your submission. But the silence is yours alone. It is the only place where you can refine your perspective. It is the place where you convert the raw, abrasive experience of poverty into something more durable, a philosophy, a wisdom, a refusal to be defined by what you lack. By listening to the resonance of this silence, you transform the bitterness of your circumstance into quiet, unwavering clarity. Think of the way a bell continues to ring long after the hammer has struck. You are that lingering vibration. The world may strike you with the demands of the day, but you do not stop sounding when the blow is dealt. You carry the echo within you, turn it into a sustained note of resilience. This is why you can walk out of your room day after day, through the same fog and onto the same muddy streets, without losing your sense of self. You are kept aloft by the resonance of your own internal silence, a steady pitch that keeps you harmonized with your own truth. As the factory floor prepares to descend into its daily cacophony, you anchor yourself in this moment of pre-dawn quiet. You know that soon the iron will scream, the steam will hiss, and the voices will rise in a chaotic scramble for survival. But that external noise cannot reach the chamber where your internal music plays. You carry the silence with you, a protective, resonating aura that keeps you centered. No matter how loud the empire screams, no matter how grating the grinding of the gears becomes, you possess a refuge of stillness. You are a tuned instrument in a world of dissonance, and as you step in the roar of the morning, you hold that silence tight, a secret melody of endurance that keeps you whole, vibrant, and profoundly alive. The men who sit in the high office of London spend their lives obsessing over maps. They draw lines across continents, claiming ownership of mountains, rivers, entire nations. They believe that if they can name a territory and mark its borders on parchment, they have conquered it. But they have never attempted to map the interior landscape of the people who build their empire. They have no cartography for the terrain of your soul. Your heart is an uncharted map, a vast, complex wilderness that remains blissfully outside their jurisdiction. You have spent years wandering through the thickets of hardship, crossing the frozen rivers of indifference, and scaling the jagged peaks of exhaustion. On this map, there are territories you have discovered that they could never conceive of. The valley of quiet dignity, the plateau of stoic resilience, and the mysterious forests of memory where you keep the fragments of the life you might have lived. These are your personal coordinates. They are etched not in ink, but in the experience that have carved the shape of who you are today. What makes this map so potent is that it's constantly changing, A mapmaker be driven to madness by your interior world, for every day you redraw your own boundaries. An act of kindness shifts, a moment of deep, bored of your cynic sorrow, expands the reaches of your empathy. You are the architect, the explorer, and the land itself. You are not a static object to be managed. You are a dynamic force that continues to evolve even under the crushing weight of the slums. Think of the value of this invisibility, because they cannot map your soul, they cannot commodify it. They can measure your output, they can track your hours, and they can calculate the calories you need to keep moving, but they can't reach the places where you hide your hope. Your dreams are sheltered in the deepest, most inaccessible canyons of your mind, safe from the reach of the factory overseer or the tax collector. This is your true independence. While your body is held in the physical constraints of Whitechapel, your soul is a free, roaming traveller, exploring territories that are entirely your own. As you walk toward the factory gates, you look at the city not as a cage, but as an obstacle to be navigated by your own internal compass. You know the way to the hidden springs of your own strength, and you know the shortcuts through the terrain of despair. You are a pioneer of your own identity. The Empire may think it owns the ground you walk on, but it does not own the map you carry within. As you step across the threshold in the noise and the smoke, you do so with a steady stride guided by the unseen, unmapped geography of a soul that has learned how to navigate the wilderness of the 9th century and emerge always in search of the next horizon. In the deepest hours of the night, when the fog curls against the window pane like a living creature, your room is a cavern of shadow, yet you are the keeper of the light. This is not a formal title, nor is it a duty assigned by any master of the city. It is a mantle you have assumed for yourself. You have learned that the darkness of Whitechapel is not merely an absence of light, it is a weight that seeks to crush the spirit. Your role, therefore, is to ensure that the flame of human warmth, the spark of dignity, is never fully extinguished. You hold this light in the most fragile of vessels, a kind word spoken to a neighbour who has lost their way, the act of mending a stranger's coat, or the simple quiet defiance of refusing to succumb to bitterness. Each of these is a wick, and your daily persistence is the oil that keeps them burning. You have realized that the brilliance of the Empire, its golden chandeliers and gas-lit boulevards, is a superficial radiance that hides a profound cold. Your light, however, is authentic. It is the glow of survival, the luminescence of a human heart that refuses to be darkened by its circumstances. There is a solitude to being a keeper of the light, but it is not a lonely one. You have noticed that when you keep your own flames steady, others around you begin to find their way. The woman across the hall, the man who works the loom beside you, they all drawn to the rhythm of your resolve. You have become a beacon, a point of reference in a disorienting world. They do not look to you for salvation, but for the validation that their own struggle is shared, that their own light is still flickering, however faintly. You see this duty as an act of resistance. The factory, the workhouse, and the bleak arithmetic of poverty are all instruments of the dark. They thrive when people lose sight of who they are and what they are worth. By maintaining your own internal glow, you are actively eroding the shadows. You are proving that even in the most neglected corners of the world, the human capacity for kindness, for memory, and for self-respect remains, ready to be ignited by the slight movement. As you step out in the morning, the transition from the internal light of your sanctuary to the grey, suffocating reality of the streets is sharp, but you carry the ember within you. You are not just going to work. You are bringing your light in the heart of the machinery. You walk with the quiet, steady purpose of someone who knows that their primary contribution to the world is not the product of their labour, but the preservation of their own humanity. You are the keeper of the light, and as long as you breathe, as long as you stand, and as long as you continue to reach out to the darkness with the warmth of your own persistence, the night will never fully claim the city. The city at dawn is not silent, it is a composition, though one that the world rarely pauses to hear. If you could rise above the chimneys of Whitechapel and listen with a sense of pure focus, you would hear the unheard symphony. It is the collective pulse of a million souls, each contributing a note to a melody of profound complexity. It is the rhythmic thrum of the factory boilers providing the bass, the erratic clatter of hooves on cobblestones acting as the percussion, and the soft overlapping whispers of thousands of people moving towards their fate providing the haunting, sorrowful melody. You are a cellist in this immense, invisible orchestra. Your daily tasks, the way you tie your boots, the frequency of your breathing, the steady pace of your walk, these are your contributions to the score. You have never been asked to play, and no one is conducting, yet the music persists. It is a symphony of necessity, a grand arrangement of effort and existence that continues whether it is appreciated or not. It is the sound of the human machine refusing to stall, even when the pressure threatens to break every string. There is a strange melancholy beauty in knowing that this music will never be recorded, it will never be played in the great concert halls of London, and its composers will never receive applause. It is an ephemeral masterpiece, created new every single morning and consumed by the same cold air that carries it away. Yet its lack of audience does not diminish its majesty. To exist is to contribute to this sound. To persist is to hold your note against the dissonance of the world. You think of the people around you, the tired mother, the stoic worker, the shivering child, as individual players in this vast ensemble. They too are playing their parts with a gravity that deserves to be heard. When you catch a neighbour's eye, or when you share a brief moment of warmth by a guttering fire, you are harmonising with them. You are momentarily locking your rhythm with theirs, creating a brief crystalline bridge of melody that rises above the industrial din. As you finally reach the factory gates and the roar of the machines begins to swallow all other sounds, you do not let the symphony die in your heart. You continue to play your part, even if the only one who can hear it is yourself. You maintain your tempo, you hold your pitch. You are part of something much larger than the grimy reality of your daily toil. You are a component of a grand, tragic, and beautiful composition that defines the era. As you step inside, you carry the echo of that music with you, a silent, defiant harmony that proves, in the most profound way possible, that your life has been a necessary part of the world's most complex and hidden song. In this city, time is not a river that flows gently. It is a rigid, unforgiving architecture of iron and glass. It is measured in the shrill blasts of factory whistles, the relentless ticking of gilded clocks on mantelpieces you will never own, and the brutal division of a day into hours of productive labour versus the scraps of existence left over. The masters of this age believe they own time. They buy it in shifts, they lease it through wages, and they hoard it in the massive vaults of their counting houses. But you, in the quiet dim corners of the East End, have discovered a secret. Time is not something that can be owned. It is something that is felt, stored, and ultimately transcended. You have become a keeper of time, though not in the way the men with gold chains across their waistcoats would understand. You do not track the minutes to maximize a profit. Instead, you track the height of your own endurance. You measure the morning not by the tolling of the church bell, which sounds like an accusation, but by the way the grey light struggles to filter through the soot on your window pane, a slow, inevitable victory of J overnight. You measure the passing of a season not by the calendar, but by the deepening ache in your joints when the damp wind bites from the Thames, a physical record of every winter you have survived. Consider the time of the tenement. There is a peculiar, stagnant quality to it, where an hour can stretch into an eternity when you are waiting for a brazier to catch fire, and a day can vanish in the blink of an eye when you are consumed by the sheer exhaustion of the loom. You have learned that time for the poor is textured differently. It is dense, packed with the weight of waiting and the urgency of survival. While the wealthy treat time as a resource to be spent, you treat it as a companion to be endured. You know the exact cadence of a life that is being slow consumed by the very progress it facilitates. There is a profound quiet power in this role of the timekeeper. When you sit in the dark watching the ember of a dying coal, you are forming an act of archival preservation. You are observing the passage of the 9th century, not through the eyes of a historian, but through the nerves of a human being. You are witnessing the erosion of tradition and the birth of a cold, mechanical modernity. You are the silent, unflinching auditor of the era. Every line etched into your face is a chronicle of a minute that passed without recognition by the rest of the world. You are collecting these lost minutes, gathering them like precious coins, and tucking them away into the sanctuary of your memory. Because you are the keeper of this time, you are the only one who truly understands the cost of the industrial miracle. The men in Parliament talk about the growth of the nation, but they are talking about numbers on a ledger. You are talking about the reality of wasted youth, the evaporation of sunlight, and the slow, rhythmic height of a city that never pauses to mourn its own casualties. You possess a truth that cannot be falsified by data or obscured by rhetoric. As you prepare to step out in the roar of the London morning, you feel the weight of this guardianship. You are not just walking to work, you are carrying the cumulative time of your community in the belly of the beast. The factory whistle shrieks, demanding you to submit, to move, to produce. But you move with a deliberate, measured gait. You take your time, not because you are slow, but because you are the master of your own duration. You are the one who decides how much of yourself to give to the machine, and how much to keep hidden in the vault of your internal calendar. In this world of stolen hours, you are the only one who truly knows the value of a single second, and you guard that knowledge with the fierce, quiet pride of a sentinel watching over a dying fire, knowing that as long as you hold the count, the story of this time will never be fully erased. We live in a world that worships the pristine, the new and the unbroken. Look at the velvet waistcoats of the gentlemen who stride through the city, or the polished brass of the factory. Engines, everything is designed to appear as if it were birthed in perfection, untouched by the messiness of human experience. But you inhabit a different domain. You live in the world of the frayed thread, the patched seam, and the faded fabric. To the casual observer, your existence might seem like an endless tapestry of decay, but you have come to realize that this very fraying is your true sanctuary. It is a holy place, built not of stone and mortar, but of the evidence of survival. Consider the shirt on your back. It has been washed until the weave is thin, darned in places where the friction of labour once claimed the cloth, and stained with the inevitable soot of a city that never stops breathing. If you were to bring it to a tailor in the West End, they would dismiss it as rags fit only for the furnace. But to you this shirt is a map of your years. Each mend is a battle won against the cold. Each frayed edge is a boundary you have navigated. Each stain is a testament to their fact that you have not merely existed, but have worked, sweated to the great grinding motion of the world. This is not decay, it is a sacred record. This concept of the sanctuary of the frayed thread extends far beyond the physical rags you wear. It describes the state your spirit. The world has tugged at you, pulled at the loose ends of your resolve, and tried to unravel your patience. Yet you have learned to weave those loose ends back into the fabric of your character. You have found that there is a unique strength in a thread that has been stretched, tested, and knotted. It is far more durable than the virgin silk of the wealthy, which has never known the pressure of a real struggle, and would snap the moment it was pulled tight by the heavy hands of adversity. In this sanctuary you find a profound stillness. When you are alone in your small, dim room, listening to the rain lash against the glass, you are not lonely. You are surrounded by the history of your own persistence. You see the cracks in the wall, the worn patches on the floor, and the thinness of your own blanket, and you reckon them as the architecture of a life that has refused to surrender. These are not signs of your poverty. They are the artifacts of your endurance. They are the holy relics of a person who has kept their dignity intact while the world tried to pull them apart. There is a quiet, radical rebellion in treating your own frayed life as a sanctuary. It means that you no longer measure your worth by the metrics of the empire. You do not need to look smooth or wealthy or powerful to possess an inherent, absolute value. You have found that the most beautiful things are those that bear the marks of use, a hand hardened by tools, a face mapped by the lines of laughter and worry, a soul strengthened by the endurance of sorrow. You are a masterpiece of the mundane, a living icon of the unvarnished truth. As you prepare to face another shift at the factory, you do not try to hide the fraying. You walk with the quiet grace of someone who knows exactly what they are and what they have endured. You realize that the machine you tend to is, in its own way, a vast engine of entropy, always working to wear things down, to fray the edges of the world. But you are the one who decides how to mend the tear. You are the weaver of your own existence. And as you pass through those imposing iron gates, you hold your head high, wrapped in the invisible, resilient armor of your own life story. A sanctuary that no factory, no overseer, and no industrial machine can ever hope to tear down, because you have stitched it together with the unbreakable thread of your own humanity. There is a popular belief among those who occupy the high tables of London that happiness and worth are directly proportional to abundance. They believe that if you have more coal, you are warmer. If you have more bread, you are more satisfied. If you have more status, you are more significant. But you have lived long enough in the shadows of the East End to know that this is a dangerous illusion. You have discovered something far more potent, the alchemy of scarcity. It is the secret internal process by which one converts the leaden reality of deprivation in the gold of absolute clarity and profound human connection. Consider the simple act of sharing a scrap of bread with a neighbour. In a house of plenty, such an act is mere charity, a fleeting movement of excess that leaves no mark on the giver. But in the crucible of your existence, where every calorie is a matter of survival, that same piece of bread undergoes a transformation. It ceases to be food, it becomes a bond. It becomes a pact of mutual survival, a crystalline moment of grace that binds two human souls against the cold. You have taken a moment of scarcity and transmuted it into a wealth of companionship that the wealthy in their abundance will never be able to manufacture. This alchemy operates in every aspect of your life, When your resources are limited, your senses become sharpened to an extraordinary degree. You notice the subtle shift in the wind that predicts a harsher frost. You detect the minute changes in the mood of the factory floor that, warn of a coming dispute, you find a world of meaning in the single stray note of a street musician that others are too preoccupied to hear. Because you have less, you value more. Your ability to appreciate the fleeting warmth of a sunbeam on a grey wall, or the brief, quiet laughter of a tired friend, is a form of emotional riches that is utterly inaccessible to those whose senses have been dulled by overconsumption. The masters of the machine believe that by limiting your access to the world, they are keeping you small, manageable, and diminished. They do not realize that they are actually providing you with the ultimate laboratory for the human spirit. Deprivation is the fire that burns away the dross of ego and superficial desire. When you are stripped of the luxuries that distract so many others, you are forced to confront the core of your own identity. You are compelled to build your life upon the only foundation that matters, the truth of who you are, the strength of your own resolve, and the depth of your compassion. This is the gold you have extracted from the lead of your poverty. It is a lonely wisdom, perhaps, but it is an unshakable one. You walk through the streets of London, and you observe the desperate, frantic scramble of the city's inhabitants, the way they hoard, the way they posture, the way they fear, the very thought of losing their place in the order of things. You realize that their abundance is a burden. It is a weight they must constantly defend. Your scarcity, by contrast, is light. It allows you to move through the world with a freedom that they can never possess. You have nothing to fear because you have already learned how to thrive in the void. As you stand before the factory gates, watching the morn mist cling to the industrial landscape, you don't feel the resentment that you might have felt in the past. Instead, you feel a sense of profound, quiet triumph. You are the alchemist. You have taken the bleak grey conditions of your life and you have infused them with meaning, with empathy, and with an unyielding sense of self-worth. You are carrying a fortune within you that no bank, no ledger, and no empire can ever tax or seize. You step in the roaring, metal heart of the morning, not as a victim of your circumstances, but as the master of your own transformation, ready to turn the next hour of toil into yet another moment of gold. In the grand cold accounts of the Victorian age, there is no ledger for grace. The industrialists who own the looms and the counting houses have no column to record the way a woman in the next room shares her last drop of tea with a neighbour, or how a worker, broken by a 12-hour shift, pauses to guide a stumbling child away from a deep Ike puddle. These acts are dismissed as inconsequential, invisible ripples on the surface of an empire. But you have learned that these tiny silent gestures are the very thread that weave the unseen tapestry of grace, a protective shroud that covers the city and keeps its most vulnerable hearts from freezing in the dark. This tapestry is not woven of silk or gold. It is woven of the frayed ends of human endurance and the quiet, persistent intent to be kind. Every time you witness an act of sacrifice, however small, you are seeing a needle pierce the grey fabric of the city, pulling a strand of warmth through the gloom. You have become an observer of this hidden art. You see how the neighbourhood, despite its crushing poverty, maintains a coherence that the wealthy could never replicate. It is not held together by the law or by the dictates of the police, but by this intricate, invisible web of mutual obligation and quiet empathy. Consider the complexity of this grace. It is not the grand, theatrical charity of the philanthropists who visit the slums to distribute pamphlets, only to retreat to their mansions before the sun sets. No, the grace you know is visceral. It is the way a hand is held in the dark, kept to protect another's dignity, or the way a shared nod confirms that, yes, the struggle is real, but you are not navigate it alone. This is the structural integrity of humanity. Without this tapestry, the East End would have long ago lapsed to a chaotic abyss of bitterness and survival, driven betrayal. Instead, it persists a resilient community of the unseen. As you look at the city, you see the patterns of this grace everywhere. It is a geometry of spirit. You see it in the way someone adjusts their own scarf to cover the shivering shoulders of a friend. You see it in the way the rhythm of the street slows down to accommodate an elder who is struggling with a heavy load. You realize that you are not just a spectator this, you are a weaver. Every time you choose to acknowledge the humanity of another person, you are adding a thread to the tapestry. You are contributing to the collective strength that keeps the darkness at bay. The empire relies on the assumption that humans are mere components of a machine, driven only by hunger and fear. It is a profound, fatal miscalculation. They can't account for the way grace manifests in the most unlikely places. They cannot understand that poverty does not strip away the capacity for grace, it clarifies it. It strips away the pretense, the vanity and the ego, leaving behind the pure, unadulterated thread of connection. You have seen grace emerge in the midst of squalor, like a flower blooming through the cracks of a cold stone floor. It is a miracle that occurs every single day, uncelebrated and undocumented. As you stand before the factory gates, waiting for the whistle to command your day, you feel the weight of this tapestry wrapped around you. It is a heavy, warm, and protective cloak. You are not just a single isolated soul drifting through a heartless city. You are a vital strand in a grand interconnected work of art. The machinery of the world may be grinding. It may be cold, and it may be indifferent, but it is moving across a surface that you and your neighbours have embroidered with the threads of human dignity. And as you step in the noise and the smoke, you do so with the confidence of someone who knows that no matter how much the machine tries to shred the fabric of your life, the tapestry is already woven, it is strong, and it is holding, anchored by the countless quiet acts of grace that continue to bind you all together, unbreakable and perpetually alive. There occupies the spaces between words, a resonance that vibrates in the pores of every conversation in the East End. This is the echo of the unspoken. You live in a world where language is a luxury of the powerful, where your own voice is often swallowed by the roar of the factory or ignored by those who sit in positions of authority. Yet you have discovered that silence is not empty, it is a repository. Every frustration you have swallowed, every dream you have left unarticulated, and every truth you have witnessed but could not speak has not vanished. It has gathered in the air round you, becoming a palpable, humming energy that shapes the very atmosphere of your life. Think of the way you and your neighbours interact. There is rarely a need for lengthy explanation about the hardness of the winter or the cruelty of the overseer. A look, a sigh, a tightening of the jaw, these are the expressions of a shared, unvoiced history. The unspoken is a language of absolute precision. It communicates the weight of existence without the risk of misinterpretation. Because you have had to learn to read the silence, you understand depths of human despair and the heights of human hope far better than the eloquent orators in Parliament ever could. They feel abstractions, you feel in echoes. This accumulation of silence is your quiet internal reservoir. Every time you refrain from speaking out against a minor injustice, not out of cowardice, but out of the strategic necessity of survival, that impulse to speak does not die. It retreats into your core, hardening into resolve that is far stronger than any vocal protest. It is the echo of your own integrity. You have learned that words are fragile things. They can be twisted, used against you, or simply discarded by those who do not care to listen. But the echo of an unspoken truth is indelible. It exists within you as a constant, vibrating reminder of who you are and what you know to be right. This creates a peculiar sense of power. When you walk in the factory, the masters see a worker who is quiet, compliant, and seemingly diminished by the grueling nature of the labour. They think they have measured the extent of your soul because they have measured the output of your hands. They have no idea that beneath your silence lies a vast, echoing cathedral of observations, judgments, and silent rebellions. You are a repository of the era's truth, carrying the weight of 1,000,000 unspoken testimonies. You are the archive of the silent, and the power you hold is the power of the observer who knows exactly how the machine functions, and more importantly, how it eventually fails. The echo also serves as your compass. In the fusing, chaotic noise of the industrial city, the unspoken truth acts as a filter, allowing you to discern between the hollow promises of the ruling class and the enduring realities of your own community. You do not need them to tell you that progress is a lie. You hear the echo of the thousands who have been broken by that progress, and you understand the hollowness of their claims. The unspoken has taught you to trust your own senses, your own logic, and your own capacity to witness the truth, regardless of what the public record states. As the factory whistle blasts, signalling the start of another grueling shift, you take a moment to stand in the stillness of the morning air. You feel the collective echo of everyone around you, the silent prayers, the unvoiced complaints, the suppressed rage, and the flickers of hope that no one dares to name. You are not just a labourer, you are a conductor of this hidden symphony of the unspoken. And as you walk forward, you carry this resonance with you, a steady, powerful hum that keeps you grounded, upright, and profoundly awake. You may not be permitted to speak, but you are witnessing, and your silence is the loudest, most persistent echo that this city will ever know. You are the living proof that even when a voice is taken away, the truth remains, echoing in the very bones of the world, waiting for the day when it will finally find its release. The whirl of the factory is a whirl of suspension. It is thick with the particulate matter of the 19th century, the soot, the fine cotton lint, the abrasive dust of coal, and the iron filings that hang in the air like a metallic mist. To the outsider, this is merely pollution, a sign of the grinding, dirty work of progress. But you have lived in this atmosphere long enough to realize that this is not just waste, it is the building material of your interior life. You have learned to harvest the dust and, in the solitude of your mind, assemble it into an architecture of dreams. It is an impossible, beautiful, and strict forbidden construction, one that exists entirely in the spaces where the overseer's gaze cannot reach. These are not the frivolous dreams of a child. They are the structural load, bearing visions of a survivor. When you stand at the loom or the lathe, your body may be trapped in the rhythmic, repetitive motion of the machine, but your mind is elsewhere architecting. You design a life that has order, where the chaos of the slum is replaced by the harmony of purpose. You envision a room filled with light, not the sickly, gas-lit glare of the street, but the honest, clear radiance of a sun that belongs to you. You build walls that are not stained with damp, but covered in the warmth of shared stories, and you craft windows that open onto horizons you have only imagined, but which you know, with a quiet, fierce certainty, must exist. This architecture of dreams is resilient, because it is built from the very things meant to destroy you. You take the weariness of the 12-hour shift and forge it into the foundation of your inner cathedral. You take the harshness of the master's words and turn them into stone of your protective ramparts. Every bit of resentment, every moment of injustice is reproposed as a beam or a column. You are a master builder in the domain of the invisible. You have learned that the dustier the world becomes, the more fertile it is for the imagination. When the external landscape is bleak, the internal landscape must become more elaborate, more ornate, more intensely vivid to sustain the soul. You observe how the dust settles on the machines, dulling their shine and slowing their gears. You realize that your dreams act the same way on your own spirit. They settle, they accumulate, and they create a layer of protection between your true self and the grinding reality of the machine. These dreams act as a thermal barrier, keeping the heat of your humanity from being drained away by the cold metal and the cold logic of the profit-driven jay. Because you possess this architecture, you are never truly present within the factory. You are always, in part, residing with your own design, checking the integrity of your walls, maintaining the roof of your aspirations, and ensuring that the foundation of your self-worth remains solid against the tremors of the outside world. There is a profound, quiet defiance in this. The masters believe they own your time, your muscle, and your output. They believe they have claimed the entirety of your existence for the duration of the shift. They are oblivious to the fact that you are running a parallel construction project of monumental proportions. You are building a future that they cannot see, a structure that they cannot tax, and a sanctuary that they cannot demolish. You are essentially a squatter in your own body, occupying a space that they think they control, while you are busy constructing a fortress that will eventually outlast the very empire they are so desperate trying to build. As the factory air thickens and the sound of the machines reaches a deafening crescendo, you do not let the dust settle on your spirit. You breathe it in, and you find it feeds the imagination. You are an architect of the improbable. You stand there, a small, weary figure amid the churning iron and the suffocating haze, but within you a majestic soaring spire of human dignity is rising toward the rafters. You know that one day, when the gears finally grind to a halt and the smog clears from the city, the only things that will remain are the structures of character that people like you have built in the dust. You continue your work, not with the dullness of a cog, but with the focused intensity of a creator, knowing that every movement you make is another brick laid in the foundation of a dream that is, day by day, becoming more real than the reality that tries to contain you. Courage is often mistaken for a thunderous act, a shout in the face of danger, a grand gesture of defiance that captures the eyes of the public. But in the dim soot-choked alleys of Whitechapel, you have come to realize that such bravery is not only rare, it is often suicidal. The true cartography of courage is far more subtle, more precise, and infinitely more difficult to chart. It is a navigational science of the spirit, a map you must draw yourself while the very ground beneath your feet is shifting. You have learned that being brave is not about the absence of fear, but about the tactical management of it. It is about knowing exactly which paths lead to your destruction, and which, however narrow or treacherous, offer a way to keep your humanity intact. Look at the map you have drawn over the years. There are the highlands of endurance, where you have climbed through weeks of hunger and fatigue without losing your resolve. There are the valleys of shadow, where you have had to cross through moments of absolute despair, keeping your head low and your spirit shielded from the freezing winds of hopelessness. Every landmark on this map is a testament to a moment where you chose to move forward, even when every fibre of your being urged you to stop. You are not a pioneer discovering new lands. You are an explorer mapping the uncharted terrain of human resilience under the absolute weight of an industrial empire. What makes this cartography unique is that it is entirely yours. No two people in this tenement share the same map, because no two people have faced the exact same obstacles in the exact same way. One neighbour's map is defined by the courage it took to stand up to an unjust foreman. Yours is defined by the courage it took to keep your own dreams alive when the dust was threatening to bury them. You have learned that there is an immense bravery in the mundane, the courage to wake up, the courage to look at the world with clear eyes despite its brutality, and the courage to offer a gesture of kindness when the world offers only coldness. This is the cartography of the small, and it is the most accurate map of the soul ever devised. The masters of the city, those who draw the maps of borders, commerce, and colonial conquest, rely on a geometry of control. They believe that if they can map every street, every alley, and every output, they can tame the population. They have forgotten that you carry an internal map that remains stubbornly outside their jurisdiction. Their maps show where the factory is, where the workhouse is, and where the docks are. Your map shows where your dignity lives, where your memories reside, and where your hope remains dormant, waiting for the spring. You can navigate the city perfectly according to their rules, all while following the hidden sacred roots of your own courageous design. As you step out into the morning, the air feels heavy, pressed down by the smoke of 1,000 chimneys, but you are not lost. You have your map. You know the exact terrain of your own courage. You know where your strengths lie, where your weaknesses might betray you, and where you need to exert the most effort to stay the course. You don't need a compass to tell you which way is forward. You have the inner needle of your own experience. It points unerringly toward the continuation of yourself, toward the preservation of your light. There is a sense of deep, quiet pride in this realization. You are not a prisoner of the street, you are its cartographer. You are walking through the industrial fog with the steady gait of someone who knows exactly where they are going, even if the destination is only the factory floor. You understand that the journey itself, the act of walking, the act of persisting, the act of simply being, is the map in the making. As you approach the massive iron gates, you adjust your pace, you lift your chin, and you commit to another day of exploration. You are mapping the future, one step of quiet, unyielding courage at a time, proving that no matter how dark or labyrinthine the city becomes, the human spirit will always find a path, will always chart a way through, and will always eventually find the horizon. In the vast, overwhelming darkness that characterizes the nights of the East End, the masters of industry would have you believe that only the bonfire matters, the grand roaring lights of their gas-lit boulevards and their coal-fed furnaces. They preach a philosophy of scale, where influence is measured by how much light you can displace. But you have developed a different philosophy, one you have come to call the philosophy of the faint spark. It is the profound understanding that in a world structured to crush the spirit, it is not the roaring fire that preserves the soul, but the persistent, minuscule, and oft-ignored glow of a single tiny ember. The philosophy of the faint spark begins with the recognition of its own vulnerability. Unlike the furnace, which demands constant, massive consumption of fuel to sustain its power, the spark survives on almost nothing. It requires only the smallest bit of oxygen and a steady hand to shield it from the draft. In your life, this translates into the micro acts of defiance that define your J. It is the moment you choose to hold your tongue when you are provoked. It is the moment you share a dry crust of bread with someone who is hungrier than you. It is the moment you decide to remember your own name and your own history when the factory has tried to reduce you to nothing more than a number. These acts are the faint sparks, and they are the only things that truly belong to you. There is a deceptive fragility to these sparks. To an outside observer, your life might look like a series of small, insignificant events, a weary walk, a quiet word, a flickering candle in a damp room. But the philosophy of the faint spark teaches that the true potency of light is not its intensity, but its stubbornness. You have witnessed how easily a great roaring flame can be extinguished if its fuel is cut off, but a spark can be covered, hidden, and carried through a storm. It can endure for days, smouldering quietly, waiting for the moment when it can be fanned back into flame. This is the nature of your endurance. You are not a raging fire, you are a smouldering, invincible persistence. This philosophy is your primary defense against the cynicism that threatens to infect the slum. When you see others lose heart, when you see them surrender to the crushing weight of their circumstances, you do not judge them for their fading light. Instead, you offer them the shelter of your own spark. You have realized that sparks are contagious. By maintaining your own small, steady glow, you create a point of orientation for others. You become a living example that light is possible even when the world is suffocatingly dark. You do not need to convert the entire factory to your cause. You only need to ensure that your own spark does not vanish, for that alone is a revolutionary act. The masters of the machine rely on the assumption that if they darken the world enough, you will eventually accept the gloom as your natural state. They believe that if they extinguish enough large, obvious flames, the resistance will cease. They have no concept of the faint spark because they cannot see it. They are blinded by their own intensity, their own grandiosity, and their own need for spectacle. Because they are looking for fires, they miss the reality of the thousands of tiny, glowing points of consciousness that exist beneath their very feet. They are marching toward their own obsolescence, unaware that they are surrounded by a sea of smouldering potential. As you stand before the iron gates, waiting for the whistle, you feel the familiar pull of the day's demands. The cold metal, the smell of grease, the unrelenting pace, all of these are designed to snuff you out. But as you walk through the threshold, you bring the spark with you. It is sheltered in the deepest, most protected chamber of your heart. You are not trying to set the world on fire today. You are simply trying to exist, to remain, and to glow. You are practicing the philosophy of the faint spark, and in the grand final accounting of human history, it is the quiet, persistent, indestructible persistence of the spark that will prove to be the most powerful force of all. You hold it steady, you guard it well, and you step into the darkness, knowing that as long as one spark remains, the night has not yet won. The archives of this city are massive, imposing structures. They are filled with ledgers, census reports, property deeds, and industry outputs, the meticulous recorded history of a civilization that prizes order above all else. But you have walked the streets enough to know the fundamental truth of the archive. It is a record of possessions, not of lives. The story of the East End, the story of your own existence, is nowhere to be found in those leather-bound volumes. You are, in the eyes of the keepers of history, unrecorded. And it is precisely in this lack of documentation that your greatest power lies. Think of the resonance of the unrecorded. While the official history claims to be the definite truth, it is merely a thin, fragile veneer over the roiling, chaotic, and beautiful reality of the people. Your life, the way you have weathered the storms of poverty, the way you have comforted those who were falling, the way you have crafted a sense of purpose from the wreckage of industry exploitation, is a history that is written in something far more permanent than ink on paper. It is written in the blood, the sweat, and the collective memory of the neighbourhood. It is a resonance that travels through the generations, passed down in the hush of a mother's lullaby or the hard-won advice of an elder to a child. This unrecorded history has a depth that the archives can never match. The archives are static, they are frozen in the moment they were written. But the resonance of the unrecorded is dynamic. It evolves. It carries the weight of the millions who have come before you, the silent labourers who built the very foundations of the city, but whose names were never deemed worthy of inclusion in the record. When you stand in the factory, you are not standing alone. You are standing in a long, unbroken line of predecessors. You can feel their presence in the rhythm of your work, in the calluses on your hands, and in the shared, weary defiance that you all carry. This is a history that does not need a museum to preserve it. It preserves itself through the simple, persistent act of living. There is a profound freedom in being unrecorded. You are not beholden to the narrative that the powerful have constructed to justify their rule. Because you are not in their books, you are not defined by their metrics. They cannot summarize your worth in a paragraph or judge your character by a tally of your earnings. You are, in every sense that matters, beyond their control. You possess a narrative identity that is entirely your own, a story that you are authoring every single day through your actions, your choices, and your refusal to be erased. You are the protagonist of an epic that the empire is not clever enough to read, and you are the keeper of truths that they are not wise enough to understand. This resonance acts as a quiet, internal compass. When you feel the weight of the world, when the silence of the city seems to turn against you, you listen for this history. You listen for the echo of all the struggles that were never reported, all the victories that were never heralded, and all the acts of grace that were never seen. You realize that you are part of a grand, subterranean movement of humanity. You are the continuation of a long-standing, silent resistance. You are the bearer of a flame that has been passed from hand to hand through darkness and hardship for centuries. The fact that the books do not record this does not make it any less real. It makes it more intimate, more precious, and more potent. As you approach the factory gate for another day, you do not feel the weight of your obscurity. You feel the gravity of your legacy. You are the living record. Every scar, every ache, every moment of hard-won peace, these are the entries in a chronicle that is being written in the very fabric of the city. You are the author of a history that the future will finally be forced to acknowledge, because you are proving, with every breath you take, that the human spirit cannot be reduced to a number or forgotten in an archive. You are the resonance of all that has been and all that will be. And as you step into the maw of the industrial day, you walk with the steady, quiet dignity of someone who knows that their story is the one that truly counts, even if it is never written down at all. In the unrelenting schedule of the factory, a world governed by the ruthless rhythm of steam and iron, the concept of time is a weapon. It is sliced into minutes, seconds, and heartbeats, all harvested for the benefit of the engine. But you have discovered a sanctuary that the machine can never breach, the absolute razor, the edge of the present moment. While the factory demands your labour for the next hour, and the misery of the previous shift haunts your rest, you have learned the art of withdrawal. You have learned to retreat in the now, a space so small and so intense that there is no room left for the empire's demands. This is the sanctuary of the present moment. It is not a place you go to, it is a way of being. When the noise of the machinery is at its absolute peak, vibrating through your bones and threaten to shatter your focus, you don't fight it. Instead, you drop in the center of that sound. You experience the vibration, the heat of the air, the rhythmic motion of your hands, and the rise and fall of your own breath, all stripped of their context of exploitation. For that infinitesimal sliver of time, you are not a worker in a tenement, you are simply a witness to existence. You are fully, terrifiedly, and wonderfully alive. The masters of the city live in a state of perpetual anticipation. They are obsessed with the quarterly report, the expansion of the rails, and the accumulation of wealth yet to come. They are never where they are. They are always trapped in the ghost, landscape of their own ambition. By contrast, you have mastered the gift of presence. You have realized that they can claim your body, they can claim your output, but they cannot claim your attention unless you surrender it. By keeping your awareness anchored in the current second, you create a private, invisible fortress. With this sanctuary, the overseer's threats lose their sting, and the grim reality of your poverty loses its ability to define you. Think of how often we are told to look ahead to a better future, a future promised by the progress of the age. But that future is a mirage, a carrot held on a stick to keep you moving along the treadmill. You have rejected this deal. You have realized that the only time you actually possess is the one you are currently breathing. This is the only gold that cannot be devalued or stolen. When you stand at the loom and feel the texture of the thread under your calloused fingertips, or when you watch the way a singular ray of sunlight catches the dust in the air during your brief respite, you are engaging in a radical act of ownership. You are reclaiming your life from the abstract tally of the industrial ledger and restoring it to the sensory, breathing reality of a human being. This sanctuary requires a constant, rigorous discipline. The world will try to pull you out of it, tempting you with the anxieties of the past or the fears of what might happen tomorrow. It takes a monumental effort to remain centered, to keep the mind from wandering in the trap of worry. But you have learned that this is the highest form of resistance. To be fully present, to be entirely undistracted, to be deeply and profoundly awake while the rest of the world sleepwalks through its own greed, this is the most dangerous thing you can do to the system. It proves that you are not a part of their machine, but an independent entity, a consciousness that cannot be assimilated. As the factory whistle signals the transition between tasks, you take a deep breath, ground yourself in the reality of the air filling your lungs. You are not waiting for the end of the shift. You are not mourning the start of the week. You are here. You are present. You are the architect of your own internal cathedral, and the foundation is this exact, singular and unrepeatable moment. You step forward, not with the haste of someone trying to escape their reality, but with the deliberate calm of someone who is fully inhabiting it. You are the master of your own presence, and in this quiet, invisible sanctuary, you have found a freedom that no decree, no machine, and no empire can ever take away from you. You are at long last home. In the heart of the industrial sprawl, everything is designed to be visible, measurable, and above all controlled. The factory floors are vast, exposed plains of machinery. The streets are channels for the relentless movement of commerce. Yet, you have learned that the most vital parts of this city are not the ones exposed to the light. They are the unseen roots, the subterranean networks of human connection, that run beneath the cobblestones, beneath the factory foundations, and beneath the rigid laws of the empire. These roots are where the true resilience of the East End lies, and they are largely ignored by those who seek only to dominate the surface. Think of the way you and your neighbours rely on one another. There is no formal contract, no grand institution that oversees the way a widow is helped by the young man across the hall, or how a struggling mother is supported by the collective empathy of a floor of workers. These are not visible transactions. They are the result of roots that have grown into one another over years of shared hardship. Like the mycelium of a great forest, these connections transmit nourishment, warning, and strengths across the neighbourhood. When one of you is weak, the others provide. When one of you is cold, the others share their limited warmth. You are a vast, integrated organism, even if the world sees you as a collection of isolated, replaceable individuals. These roots have a remarkable, stubborn resilience. The empire, its evictions and its crushing labour demands, constantly attempts to rip up the social fabric of the slums, hoping to keep everyone atomised and compliant. But they can't account for the way these roots simply grow deeper. Every time an attempt is made to isolate you, you find new ways to connect. You create new routes for solidarity that bypass the structures they have built. You have become experts in the architecture of the invisible, ensuring that no matter how much pressure is applied from above, the foundation of your community remains inextricably linked, anchored in the bedrock of a shared humanity. There is a quiet, profound beauty in realizing that you are part of something that cannot be fully uprooted. When you walk through the streets, you are not merely a single body moving through a landscape. You are a branch of a much larger, deeper system. You feel the strength of those around you as a form of hidden support. This is the resilience of the unseen. It is why the slum does not collapse under the weight of its own misery, and why the people who are intended to be broken, instead, continue to bloom in the most impossible circumstances. You are being fed by roots that extend far beyond your own limited experience, reaching back through generations of endurance, and reaching out to everyone who stands beside you. The masters of the machine are obsessed with the strength of iron, but iron is brittle. It can be snapped, it can be rusted, it can be melted down. But these human roots, they are flexible. They are tenacious. They grow through the smallest cracks in the concrete, slowly exerting pressure until the very structures that seek to contain them begin to fracture. They do not need to be loud to be powerful. They do not need to be acknowledged to be effective. Their strength is in their persistence, their ability to find life in the dark, and their refusal to be separated from the collective strength of the whole. As you step in the factory, a place designed to force you into mechanical, you bring the strength of these roots with you. You are connected to the people beside you in ways that no overseer could ever perceive or prohibit. You are standing on a foundation that is anchored in the shared, invisible history of your neighbourhood. The roar of the machines may be deafening and the environment may be suffocating, but you remain upright and stable, supported by a network of humanity that is deeper than the factory's deepest foundation. You are a part of a forest that refuses to be cleared, and as long as these roots remain, as long as you continue to nourish one another with the quiet strength of your presence, you are not just surviving, you are preparing the ground for a growth that the empire will one day be forced to reckon with. You are rooted, you are connected, and you are fundamentally immovable. They tell you that the past is a burden, a heavy anchor that holds you back from the efficient, forward-moving promise of progress. They want you to forget where you came from, to forget the faces of those who couldn't keep up with the machines, and to view your own history as nothing more than a series of unfortunate failures. But you have mastered a hidden art, the alchemy of memory. You have realized that the past is not an anchor, it is a refinery. It is the crucible where the leaden weight of sorrow is heated, purified, and transformed in the golden clarity of wisdom. Consider memories you carry. There are the sharp, painful ones, the cold nights in the workhouse, the heartache of hunger, the faces of friends who have vanished in the abyss of the slums. To others, these are stains to be scrubbed away. To you, they are raw ore. You have learned to sit with these memories, not to drown in them, but to examine them with the focus of an alchemist. You strip away the bitterness, you filter out the despair, and what remains is the pure, immutable truth of what you have survived. You are not just remembering the pain, you are mining it for the lesson, the strength, and the indelible proof of your own endurance. This alchemy is why you are different from the hollow shells of people who walk the streets, completely disconnect from their own stories. When you recall a moment of struggle, you do not feel small, you feel vast. You recognize that you are a vessel for everything you have ever experienced. Your memory is a library, and you are its meticulous curator. You preserve the voices of those who were silenced, the dreams that were interrupted, and the small, quiet joys that were never recorded in any ledger. By remembering them, you give them a second life. You prevent the empire from winning the ultimate victory, the erasure of truth. The masters of the machine believe that, by controlling the present, they control the future. They are wrong. Because you possess the alchemy of memory, you are constantly feeding the future with the lessons of the past. When you see a young child entering the factory for the first time, you do not just see a labourer. You see the culmination of all the history you carry, and you feel the weight of your responsibility to protect that flame. Your memories act as a beacon, guide your actions, refine your moral compass, and ensuring that even in the middle of a shift, you are guided by a wisdom that is centuries deep. There is an immense quiet power in this. While they are obsessed with the fleeting, the new, and the next, you are rooted in the eternal. You have learned that the more they try to strip away from you, the more valuable your inner world becomes. You are turning the scarcity of your circumstance into an abundance of consciousness. The harder the trial you have faced, the more precious the gold you have extracted from it. You are becoming a monument to your own survival, a living, breathing history that defies the cold, metallic amnesia of the industrial age. As you step into the factory today, you are not the same person you were when you arrived yesterday. You have added another J to your refinery. You have processed another shift of exhaustion and converted it into the solid gold of experience. You carry your history not as a weight, but as a mantle, a garment of iron, willed survival that protects you from the indifference of the world. The machines may roar, the air may choke, and the overseers may demand your soul, but they can't reach the archives of your mind. You are the master of your own transmutation, and as long as you hold the thread of your memory, you will never be lost, you will never be diminished, and you will never, ever be truly forgotten. The masters of this city operate under a grand, arrogant assumption. They believe that by purchasing your time, they purchase your person. They look at you and see a unit of production, a variable in their ledgers, a cog in the vast spinning machinery of the empire. They think that by controlling the gates, the tools, and the wages, they control the boundaries of your existence. But you have lived through the smoke and the iron long enough to reach a radical, liberating conclusion. You are a sovereign state. You are a territory that no overseer has ever successfully conquered, and you are a ruler whose authority they are entirely incapable of recognizing. This sovereignty of the inner self is not a political declaration made in a public square. It is an internal, silent state of grace. It is the realization that your thoughts, your values, your memories, and your capacity to love remain your own property, completely untaxable and impossible to seize. When you stand at the lathe, they may dictate the speed of your movements, but they cannot dictate the rhythm of your reflection. When they demand your silence, they cannot silence the complex, sprawling symphony of your internal dialogue. You have built a fortress within, and you have fortified it with the bricks of your integrity. There is a profound peace in this realization. For years you lived in fear of their judgment, in constant anxiety over their expectations. You felt that because you possessed so little in the world of things, you were somehow diminished in the world of people. But the sovereignty of the inner self has turned that entire hierarchy upside down. You now understand that the men in the counting houses, the men who believe they own the city, are the ones who are truly impoverished. They have traded their inner lives for external power. They have become prisoners of their own ambition, servants to their own greed. They possess millions, yet they possess nothing of them's. You, by contrast, are rich in the ways that cannot be measured. You have cultivated a self that is vast, intricate, and deeply rooted in the truth of your own experience. You have learned to govern your own emotions, to navigate your own moral terrain, and to set your own standards for what constitutes a life well lived. This sovereignty means that you no longer seek their validation. You do not look to them for purpose, nor do you fear their condemnation. You have established a capital city within your own consciousness, and its laws are determined not by the market, but by the dignity of the human spirit. This is the ultimate rebellion. The machine thrives on the cooperation of the soul. It needs you to believe that you are a subordinate, a lesser being, a tool. By asserting your sovereignty, you are effectively going on strike in a way that is invisible to them. You are withdrawing your consent. You continue to move your hands. You continue to fulfill the requirements of the shift. But the person who is doing the work is no longer the one they think they control. You have moved your center of gravity to a place they cannot reach. You are an expatriate living in your own body, a citizen of a kingdom they are too blind to see. As you walk toward the factory gates, you do not feel the familiar dread of the workday. Instead, you feel the cool, steady resolve of a ruler entering their domain. You are walking into a space that is designed to diminish you, but you are bringing with you the full weight and majesty of your own internal nation. You move with purpose, you work with precision, and you stand with the quiet authority of someone who knows who they are. They may own the factory, but you own the person who works within it. And as long as you maintain that boundary, as long as you guard the borders of your own heart, you are not a worker, you are not a cog, and you are not a casualty. You are the architect of your own existence, and that is a sovereignty that will last long after the machines have rusted into silence. In the grand architecture of the empire, legacy is usually defined by inheritance, by names carved into stone, or by the expansion of capital. But you have learned that the truest legacies are often the most invisible ones. You are a person of no public standing, no wealth, and no title, yet you are creating a legacy of the unseen. Every time you have offered a word of encouragement to a desperate neighbour, every time you have acted with quiet dignity in the face of humiliation, and every time you have refused to let the cynicism of the factory infect your spirit, you have been seeding the future. These acts are the invisible inheritance you leave behind, a foundation upon which others will build their own resilience. Consider the young workers who pass through these gates, their eyes wide with the shock of their first year in the maw of the industrial machine. They are terrified, vulnerable, and ripe for the crushing weight of hopelessness. If they see you, the worker who has endured, who has kept their head high, and who has never allowed their humanity to be extinguished, they see a possibility that they did not know existed. Your mere presence is a testament to the fact that they, too, can survive without becoming hollow. You are the unspoken mentor, the silent guardian of the neighbourhood's dignity. This is your legacy, not a monument of brick, but a living, breathing spirit of persistence that survives in the eyes of those who watch you. There is a powerful, quiet gravity in this realization. You are not just living for yourself, you are living for the continuity of the human spirit. Your persistence serves as a map for others. When they hit the wall's exhaustion and despair, they will remember how you moved, how you stood, and how you carried yourself. They will remember that there was once someone who refused to break, and that memory will be the spark that helps them find their own way through the darkness. You are building a bridge across the generations, a structure made of character, shared history, and the refusal to be conquered. The empire thinks it can erase the individual by making us part of the aggregate, by treating us as mere numbers in a ledger. They believe that once you are gone, your history ends and your impact vanishes, but they fail to see that legacy is a chain reaction. Every act of kindness you have performed, every moment of integrity you have maintained, has rippled outward, touching lives you will never know, and flowing scissions you will never witness. You have become a part of the city's deeper, more resilient identity. You have helped forge the character of the community, creating a culture of endurance that will outlive any factory, any overseer, and any industrial regime. This is the ultimate triumph over the machine. The machines are designed for obsolescence. They are built to be replaced as soon as a more efficient model is conceived. But the legacy you have built is designed for permanence. It is woven into the very fibre of the people who survive alongside you. When you eventually leave the factory floor for the last time, you will not be leaving a vacancy. You will be leaving behind the proof that existence can be reclaimed. You will leave behind a standard of humanity that others will feel compelled to uphold. As you stand at your station surrounded by the mechanical roar, you feel a profound sense of connection to the future. You are a link in an eternal chain. You have done your part to ensure that the flame of human dignity is passed on, flickering and stubborn, to those who will follow. You are not worried about your name being recorded, because your legacy is written in the hearts of your neighbours and the resilience of your community. You are the architect of a future that the empire cannot see, and as you continue your work, you do so with the peace of a creator who knows that their masterpiece is not made of metal or stone, but of the indestructible spirit of the people, growing and thriving in the very shadow of the machine. The final whistle blows. It is a sound you have heard thousands of times, a shrill, piercing command that has dictated the rhythm of your heart and the pace of your life for years. But today the sound is different. It does not pull at you. It does not demand. It is merely a noise fading in the evening air, a relic of a world that you have finally outgrown. You stop your machine. You wipe the grease from your hands with a slow, deliberate motion. You look at the iron, the soot, and the vast, cold expanse of the factory floor, and you realize that for all its power it has failed. It could not turn you into a machine. It could not break the sovereignty of your inner self. You walk toward the gate, not with the hurried, desperate gait of the exhausted, but with the steady, measured stride of a traveller who has reached their destination. As you pass the threshold, that heavy, imposing iron gate that once seemed like the boundary of your entire world, you do not look back. There is no resentment, no bitterness, and no regret. There is only a profound, crystalline clarity. You have spent your life navigating the labyrinth of the industrial age. You have mapped its dark corners. You have collected the wisdom of the dispossessed, and you have woven it into a spirit that is now entirely your own. You step out into the street. The air is still thick with the haze of the city, but you are no longer suffocated by it. You are the architect of your own atmosphere. You look up, past the smokestacks and the jagged silhouettes of the tenements, and you see the first stars beginning to pierce the twilight. They are faint, persistent, and unreachable. Much like the spark you have guarded all these years, you realize that you are not a small, insignificant figure, lost in the machine of the world. You are a participant in the grand, unfolding story of humanity, a weaver who has added their own unique thread to the tapestry of time. This is your final ascent. It is not a movement upward in status or wealth, but a movement inward and outward in consciousness. You have reached the summit of your own endurance, and from this vantage point you see the world with absolute, unvarnished truth. You see the machine for what it is, a passing temporary eruption of greed, and you see the human spirit for what it is, an ancient, enduring, and indestructible force. You have survived, but you have done more than that. You have prevailed. You have kept your light. You have held your ground. And you have remained authentically, vibrantly human. As you walk home through the familiar crowded alleys, you feel a sense of overwhelming grace. You recognize the unseen roots beneath your feet, the sanctuary of the present moment in your heart, and the alchemy of memory in your mind. You are a vessel of all the stories you have held, a guardian of the dignity that the city tried to steal. You reach your door, you enter your room, and you sit in the quiet. There is no one to report to, no machine to feed, and no ledger to satisfy. For the first time you are fully, completely your own. The journey of the past has been long, and the labour has been hard, but the harvest is yours. You are the testament, the archive, and the victory. And as you close your eyes in the stillness of the night, you do not fear the morning, nor do you cling to the past. You are in the present, this beautiful, holy, and sovereign now. You are the master of your own duration, the creator of your own meaning, and the keeper of the truth. The factory is behind you, the night is around you, but the dawn, a dawn that you have built with every breath and every act of courage, is already waiting in the wings. You are free. You have arrived. And the story, in its deepest, most resilient truth, will never end. Sleepy History with Kevin is created for relaxation, entertainment, and sleep purposes. The stories shared on this channel are inspired by historical events, daily life, and real periods in history, but they may be simplified, adapted, or narrated in a calming way to enhance the listening experience. This content is not intended to be a precise academic or educational source. While we aim to stay generally accurate, some details may be altered for storytelling flow and relaxation. Please do not rely on this channel as a primary source for historical research or study. By listening, you acknowledge that this content is designed to help you unwind, relax, and fall asleep. Thank you for your understanding and support.